Harbor Advisory Board members. This is the Thursday, June 4th, 2015 regular meeting of the Harbor Advisory Board. I welcome everyone. It looks like we do have a quorum. The only one that is absent, I understand, is Dana. One of his children is having graduation, I believe, this evening. So congratulations, Dana, and we will miss you. I'd like to have a moment of silence. And then, Neil, if you could direct us to the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time we generally have advisory board member announcements or presentations. Gene, I'd like to start at your end.
I have nothing.
Alan?
Yeah, we have 3 boats from Morro Bay that are participating in the cleanup in Santa Barbara. The pipeline broke just north of Refugio on the bluff, and there's a thing called FORT, which is the Fisherman's Oil Response Team, and the Bonnie Marietta, the Nicky J, and the Dorado have gone down from Morro Bay to help, and there are boats from other ports up and down the coast. And Jeremiah O'Brien is coordinating the boat activity with the shore, and he says that they've received praise from all the organizations they're working with, from NOAA, from Clean Seas, from the owner of the professional ship provider for the exercise, and from the helicopter pilots. So they're doing good works down there.
Thank you, Alan. Lynn?
Yes, I would like to speak about the ad hoc committee for risk management. Unfortunately, it did not get on the agenda for tonight. We have had several meetings and are ready to bring a report to the board, but that will have to be postponed until our next meeting.
Thank you, Lynn. And then, Lynn, are you going to send that out to us prior?
I will send out the report for your review before the next meeting. Yes, I will do that by email.
Okay, and then send it to Polly, and Polly put it in the agenda.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have anything. Neil? Nope. And then Ron?
Nope, not this evening.
Okay, well, it's a light evening. I don't see too many people in the audience either. So with that, I'd like to take a moment to look at the minutes from our special Harbor Advisory Board meeting that was held on April 22nd, 2015. I'm sorry.
You want to do general public comment first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anybody?
Yes. General public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to discuss this? Okay. Matt? No? Okay. All right, then I will go to A1. And A1 being, again, the special Harbor Advisory Board meeting that was held on April 22nd, 2015. Has everyone had a chance to look at it? I hear a motion.
Approve the minutes.
Alan, approve the minutes. I hear a second.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and second. Any discussion? With none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Minutes are approved from April 22nd, 2015. And then our regular meeting that we had on May 7th, I would like to take a second to look at that and to have a motion to approve or make amendments to that, please.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I hear a motion to approve it. A second?
I'll second that.
And Gene will second it. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so with that, our next B1 would be the public hearings, and that's the Harbor Department status report. Our friendly Harbor Director, Eric.
Thank you and good evening. Wow, got some voice carry here. Welcome back. So status report looks a little different than past months and years. I was a little pressed on time to get all my details in before we went to press, so I just gave an outline here, and I'll just mostly be verbal, so you're just going to have to watch me instead of reading. In no particular order, the dredge ship Yaquina from the Corps of Engineers here for her annual about 20 days of dredging. She got here last Friday, pretty much immediately started dredging. Goes through the 14th or 15th of June, I believe, primarily concentrating on the harbor entrance and the entrance improvement project, which is the big 40-foot hole we dig out in the harbor entrance to keep waves from breaking. Although they have been coming in once a day, pick up a load off of the T-piers. They're going about as far south as the South T-pier. There's a fair amount of encroachment from where channel marker number 8 usually is. So they've been taking one load a day in there just to keep picking away at that. And they're going well. They're going to be, Paul, do you know the date? They're going to be at the North T-pier on the 9th, June 9th, for one day of a crew change. And I believe on the 10th they move down to Central Coast Seafood and Fuel and Ice and take on fuel, so they'll be there most of the day on the 10th. And hopefully we'll have good digging, and they will be out of here about mid-month. Our lifeguard season started up with the Memorial Day weekend. We had our tower staffed. Knock on wood, all went well. Great team of folks out there, young men and women guarding our beaches, 2 lifeguard towers as usual. A fair number of new recruits came out of our academy. They'll be again on the beach this weekend, and I think we take one more week break from weekday coverage, and then starting weekend after this one, they're on the beach full-time through Labor Day, at which point we'll just go to weekends only through the Harbor Fest weekend. So look for those folks on the beach, and if in doubt, always swim near a lifeguard. Fishing seasons, several seasons are underway. I don't know if anything's new since the May meeting, but rockfish season opened back in March, as did recreational salmon. Started off a little slow. Some numbers started picking up. Guys are scratching out some fish here and there. Commercially, I think they're doing, on the small scale, some of the guys are doing okay. Not great, not tons of fish, but a few here and there to try and eke out a living. And then Dungeness crab season's coming to a close. A fair number of boats, of our own boats, Morro Bay boats, were here in the area. Good part of the season, and a number of out-of-town boats were here as well. But they're wound down. Everyone's starting to pull their gear, so you're starting to see a lot of traps piled up everywhere. So eventually that stuff goes home, and that season ends, and everyone starts gearing up for albacore and getting ready to start disappearing for that. Tascadero High School Career Day out at Tascadero High. They once again invited us out to their career day. Recently we sent our folks out with our PWC, a couple of reserves, and we went out with the Morro Bay Coast Guard folks and had some little interactive displays. It's always pretty well received. So that was good positive press there for our rescue folks. I apologize, I don't have all the dates of these. These are all things that have been in the past. Safe Boating Day at the Morro Bay Yacht Club a couple of weekends ago. Morro Bay Friends of the Harbor Department were there. Great turnout. Nice barbecue. Display of the sheriff's new patrol boat, Coast Guard boat, our boat. Good time, I think, was had by all. Had some pretty good weather on that day. Firefighting breathing apparatus for Harbor Department personnel. We've recently been working with our fire department to get all of our folks fit tested and outfitted with SCBAs, which are the fancy acronym for self-contained breathing apparatus, which is basically the air mask that the firemen wear when they go fight fires. While our folks aren't trained, qualified, or equipped to enter into a structure-type fire, which is typically where you have those, because of the pretty toxic nature of a boat burning or a pier burning, we need that respiratory protection even when we're there in a supportive role with the fire department. So we've got that gear, and we'll be working with them from here on out and into the future, keeping that stuff equipped and up to speed, and our folks using it. Harbor Patrol and lifeguard training. We had some recent training a couple of weekends ago with our Harbor Department and our new lifeguards, just to familiarize them with boat operations and PWC operations. Some of them never worked or swam near boats. So we did a good Saturday of most of our Harbor Patrol personnel and most of our lifeguard personnel all getting together and doing a bunch of rescue and mock scenarios out on the beach to get ready for the season. And we've recently sent all of our personnel to our hazmat response refresher training. All of us are variously trained to different levels of hazardous materials response. Most of them are to the level that's called first responder operational, which is a basic awareness and gives you a little authority to take some action, but at least gives you an awareness of different hazardous materials incidents and hazardous materials labeling and signs and things to look out for when some sort of an incident happens. So everyone got refreshed there. That was put on gratefully by San Luis Ambulance. They're the folks that have been putting that on for the past decade or so for a lot of different agencies in the county. So thanks to San Luis Ambulance for that. Recent city council actions. I'm going to come back to that one. Which I stand by. Talk amongst yourselves.
Are you okay?
No.
Oh.
Didn't bring my notes, so I'm going mostly from memory on recent city council actions. I apologize. The most significant recent city council action was approval of a new 10-year lease for Moore Bay Fish Company / Santa Monica Seafood at the fish dock next to us in Tognazzini's dockside. That lease was a culmination of about a year and a half of effort with Santa Monica Seafood folks and myself to negotiate a new lease. The lease site down south of the Moore Bay Aquarium, the mirror image lease site that was held by the Helds on the north end and the VLAs on the south end. The VLAs bought out the Helds. It's now one owner, and that lease site is now combined under one ownership. It's a dual retail down below, hotel units up above, transient occupancy hotel units up above, and a nice new dock out front. So I think that's probably the gist of most of the recent city council action. City council received a management partners report, which was a report, financial and structural report that the city commissioned back in 2008, and they just updated it. We're taking first steps and trying to figure out what comes next. It went to the last city council meeting, just a presentation, an overview. No action was taken, and in the coming months, the city manager and all the department heads are going to be reviewing that, and I'm sure that's going to be coming to the Harbor Advisory Board at some point for some of the points and taking Harbor Advisory Board input on that. And with that, Paul? Any questions? Gene?
Eric, on the dredging, if they finish early, is there any possibility for them to run back the harbor and hit some of those high spots?
They really won't. Typically they're not going to end early. There's more volume out there than they have days for. 20 days, they're authorized for 20 days, which includes their transit days coming and going. So we lose about 3 to 4 days in transit. So we're really down to 15, 18 days, depending on how quickly their transit goes. Again, they focus primarily in the entrance, and then the sandbar that builds up kind of at the pinch point right at Target Rock, and then if they can, they'll get to some other areas. They've been coming inside just because there's been some encroachment off the pier there into that channel marker number 8 zone. They don't like to go much further than that because, as you know, once you go past channel marker, probably channel marker 12, the channel starts getting pretty skinny. We did have them go back there 6, 7, 8 years ago now because of that high spot off Tylands Park in particular, and they went and dredged it. I think they went in empty and dredged their way back out. Unfortunately, the channel gets so narrow at the turning corner down there at channel marker 16, right off the launch ramp corner at the fish cleaning station, that they ended up leaning on our docks there and our piling and snapped our pile off just because it was such a tight fit. So they're very reluctant to try and get back there any further just because there's not room. So yeah, they don't like to back, although the boat's very maneuverable, they don't like to back up. They like to be able to go forward. So I don't suspect we'll be convincing them to head on back that far. I'd like to, but probably not.
Arlene?
Eric, again on the dredging, a few years ago, probably quite a few years ago, they gave some tours to the public and to the Harbor Advisory Board members of the dredge. Do you think that could ever happen again?
The tours they used to give, a number of years they happened to land over the July 4th weekend, and then to be here over the July 4th holiday, whenever it was, and depending on where their pier day was for their crew change, they'd sometimes give tours at that time. Recent years, they've pretty much shut down the public tours, unfortunately. The only real good time for them to do that from a logistical standpoint is when the boat's at the pier. And when the boat's at the pier, they got one crew leaving, one crew coming, they're trying to brief each other and take on water and stores and everything else. And it's just too crazy of a time for them to try and guide folks through. Obviously, if there's folks around on the boat and the public wants to, go walk out on the pier and get an up-close and personal view and talk to a crewman, that's certainly possible and encouraged. But getting on the boat, probably not. Tours, they do some tours. Councilman Makowetsky toured. Councilwoman Johnson was going to go, but unfortunately she got sick and wasn't able to go, so he went earlier this week. So there's a potential that city council and advisory body type folks can go, but I've got to ask and see. So if anybody's interested, let me know.
I am.
Okay, Alan?
Well, how is the channel down off Tidelands Park? Is it silted back in?
Yeah, there's a high spot just south, and I'm probably not the best to ask because I don't get out of my cave much, but just south, and I know this because I ran aground towing a boat through there, but just south of the Tidelands Park and a little closer to shore, there's a pretty high spot that typically builds up there because it must be an eddy spot, and I was towing a boat that had about a 10-foot draft, and it was a medium-ish highest tide, and we found the bottom, so it's definitely, you got to pick your way back there if you draw more than 6 or 7 feet.
Okay.
The dredge depth there is only 12. That's the design depth there at 12, so obviously anything built up is going to be something 12 feet or less.
Yeah, I've run aground there before.
Neil? Ron?
Two things. Number one, last weekend, that particular spot we're talking about at a +2 tide was 7 feet. Just for those of you who draw more than 7 feet. Eric, if you know, where are the spoils dumped this time around?
We don't like to call them spoils. We like to call them dredge materials.
I stand corrected.
The sand. They are dumped by this ship, by the Aquina, about half a mile, 3/4 mile south of the South Jetty. It's the EPA-designated nearshore. It's called the Nearshore Disposal Site. And that disposal is allowed because the materials are clean and they match the beach grain size, so they're used for beach replenishment. Generally, dredging up and down the coast, they look for any kind of beneficial reuse of the dredge materials they can, and beach replenishment's a big one. With the advent of seawalls and other things along the coast that have drastically changed the ability of the coast to retain sand, they put back as much sand as they can where they can, and it's been pretty darn effective. So that's the one spot where this ship goes. If we get a bigger dredging project with a pipeline coming through and they pipeline it out, it goes north of the rock, kind of off the north to middle end of the beach tract is where that designated disposal site is.
Okay. All right then, Eric, thank you so much. As we go into unfinished business, C1, I'd like to get an update from the Marine Services Facility Boatyard Ad Hoc Committee report, please. Ron?
The committee met during May. Thank you. The committee met during May, and individual committee members executed committee-related tasks. On May 15th, the committee members, Dana McClish, Alan Allward, and myself met with City of Morro Bay Community Development Manager Scott Graham. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss with the city the history of boatyard and haul-out facility planning, to include various boatyard and haul-out facility sites, and to specifically discuss potential utilization of the Triangle Lot, which is immediately south of Dynergy property, for a Morro Bay boatyard. The committee just wanted to make sure that the city and Scott's the appropriate person knew everything we knew. Mr. Graham acknowledged the various historic studies. Additionally, he shared with us the city's likely intention of using significant portions of the triangle lot for, quote, offset, unquote, parking, which would be needed to bring city plans for the downtown portion of the Embarcadero to fruition. We discussed with Mr. Graham the probable space requirements of a boatyard, as well as the site access needs relative to moving boats from a nearby haul-out location to and from the yard. Mr. Graham acknowledged the pathway requirements for moving boats in and out of the triangle lot. Additionally, he reiterated the city's current planning to use southern portions of the triangle lot for parking, and noted the planned use of a small portion of the lot along the south property line for elements of the Maritime Museum, which was a presentation made at the last regular meeting here. Mr. McClish pointed out that if the city owns the property immediately adjacent to the west wall of the triangle lot, which is along the east side of Embarcadero, there may be considerable opportunity for angled street parking along that side of Embarcadero if the city's looking for additional parking. So relative to that action point, the committee has a recommendation of the Harbor Advisory Board, and that is that the board consider ratifying that the committee continue to monitor the city's intentions regarding the triangle lot, continue to press the city relative to consciously making a commitment to siting a haul-out facility and boatyard facility on as feasible as possible city property, or declare that no such sites are available. Further, that the Harbor Advisory Board direct the committee to speak directly with the City Council and the City Manager regarding utilizing the triangle lot for a boatyard. And before Harbor Advisory Board thinks about that, we have one more report item. We discussed with Mr. Graham the metal building on Dynegy property, which in my report I incorrectly identified as Dynergy, and thankfully Polly corrected me. Immediately adjacent to the triangle lot's north property line, there's a large buff-colored metal building right along the property line at the north side of the triangle lot. This building may be ideal for boatyard utilization. It is 40 by 70 and 20 feet tall. Mr. Graham replied he was familiar with the building, and in fact there is a pending demolition plan submitted by Dynegy. We encourage Mr. Graham to energize the city to immediately open dialogue with Dynegy concerning that building prior to it being demolished. We pointed out the building may represent a significant opportunity for the city, and if acquired and moved across the property line, represents a significant needed element of a boatyard. We also pointed out that if the city was unable to purchase the building, but dialogue between the city and Dynegy indicated the building could be purchased, private parties might be interested. Recommendation from the committee to the board: obtain from the city definitive information regarding the availability of the subject Dynegy building. And I have a preamble to that. I can tell you, I can share with the board that the city did open a dialogue with Dynegy about that building. I don't know what the current status of that dialogue is, but the city did open a dialogue. So we're looking. The city's looking for the Harbor Advisory Board to consider our two recommendations and to hopefully take action on them.
Ron, may I comment on one aspect?
Sure.
I had a discussion with Eric, and right now in the planning stages on June 23rd, the City Council has it on their agenda to discuss the boat haul-out facility. So at that point in time, which would be the 23rd, would be the ideal opportunity to have, I know Ron's going to be out of town, but I'll talk to Dana and myself and anyone else that would be interested in the public and here on the Harbor Advisory Board to go to the City Council and discuss the work that we put into, and I feel that the next step is to authorize the Harbor Board, the Harbor, Eric, to do a site analysis, to hire a contractor to draft together. Now, what we have come up with is Dana found out from Larry what they did on their Maritime Museum is that we could probably contract out with the same architect to design a boat haul-out facility that would fit in with the Maritime Museum and the existing parking that the city wants to do. So I think that we have a window very soon to really get the city to make a decision on the direction that they would like to go so that we can follow suit, because it's really ultimately up to the city to decide what they want to do. So I just wanted to bring that out.
Yeah, Ron, have we completely eliminated the idea of acquiring the property north of the Dynegy power plant?
No option has been discounted. What the committee has learned during its work over the last year is that that site is somewhat problematic in terms of environmental stuff. Mike Molitari, who's the acting director of the National Estuary Program here, while the lady we're all familiar with is out on maternity leave, provided the committee with some input regarding that, and unofficial input. And yes, that site hasn't been ruled out, but it would be challenging, and probably quite challenging with the Coastal Commission. Coastal Commission seems currently, so I'm told, I have no certain knowledge, to be unenthusiastic about using undeveloped coastal land within their purview for industrial or even light industrial use, much less commercial.
Ron, the area I was thinking about was behind the fence, the Dynegy property.
I'm sorry.
Where the old tanks used to be.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gene. I misunderstood. So within their property line.
That's correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally misunderstood you. What we've been told, what the committee's been told by the city of Morro Bay, we have no direct information, is that Dynegy does not appear to be disposed to want to break up that parcel in any way. That's the most recent information that we have.
Any other comments? Alan?
There seems to be, the National Estuary Program is not too happy about any kind of ways that would go along with that in that corner of the harbor there. That's their favorite eelgrass place. So we're considering the South T Pier as the sole possibility at this point.
I just keep bringing it back up because the initial studies that we had at the boat haul-out facility use that property just adjacent to the north of the intake building. The city owns it, and we have several plans that show, crossing over there. And to me, it's just a logical way of going, but it may not work out.
I think I was involved in that too, and we saw that, and it seemed to be the most ideal place to put the haul-out, but I don't think we have the land to put and it would be problematic to get it going all the way down to the triangle lot. At least that's my understanding. So are we able to discuss the recommendation that the subcommittee would like us to direct toward the city council, Eric? I know that there was some discussion that you sent me.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll make a quick comment and make sure we don't have any public comment out there before we discuss too much further. But yes, that's why initially when the agenda went out, we didn't have the ad hoc committee's report, and had you wanted to take some action on it, we needed to get it into the agenda, and that's why we revised the agenda, and we got it in within the 24-hour deadline, so that's provided. So yes, you can take option. I would recommend see if there's any public comment, and then deliberate and see where the Harbor Advisory Board wants to take this. As you correctly pointed out, we've got on the tentative agenda for June 23rd, review the Harbor Advisory Board recommendations on the boatyard/marine services facility. So we'll be queuing up the recommendations from our previous meeting, as well as any other input from the ad hoc committee and any action we take tonight. The timing is good for that. And just as a matter of clarification, Ron was correct in that, well, yes, we've inquired to Dynegy as to if there's any other properties, and we did over the last year to see if they wanted to give up anything in lieu of the $500,000 they owed the city for the community development payment. They were not interested at all in breaking anything up. So I think it's wise to keep that in the back pocket in case it ever does come to pass that Dynegy is amenable to potentially selling that property. Even if you do site design and analysis and whatnot over in Triangle Lot, it could probably transfer to another location largely. So I think that's always an option, but it's prickly. And the eelgrass is the prime thing, like Alan said. NEP is not real keen on tearing up eelgrass beds at this time. So we'll see if there's any public comment and then go on into it.
Okay, so I'd like to have, is there anyone in the public that would want to discuss strictly the Marine Services Facility boat yard matter right now? Okay. Would you like to come up and, if you have something to say, could you please state your name?
Steve Yarling, liveaboard, pirate, commercial fishing, industries help. You know, it would be nice. We need a boatyard because this is a working harbor. We have boats that need to be dealt with. The boatyard isn't adequate to handle a lot of boats in the harbor. It would be nice, too, if we had a work dock. A dock specifically for boaters to work on their boats. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be taken care of on boats, yet we don't have adequate places to work on them even. And I'd also like to entertain the thought, since I am an elderly liveaboard, is we need a handicap dock too. Because there's handicapped people that live on the water that deserve civil treatment like everyone else.
Okay.
And it would also be nice if we had a decent shower facility.
Well,
and some other things like other harbors have.
I understand.
But no one ever goes there.
Thank you. Any other comment, public, on the Marine Services Facility boat yard? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to bring it back to the council here. Gene, do you have any other discussion on the motion? Alan?
No.
Lynn? Neil? Ron, you have anything else to say?
No.
Okay. Do I hear anyone that would like to make a motion to send the recommendation of the Harbor Advisory Board Marine Facilities Ad Hoc Committee to the City Council?
I'll make that motion if I may.
Okay. Here a second?
I second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Alan. And could you read that for us, Polly?
I think I'll start out by saying the Harbor Advisory Board recommends to continue to monitor the city's intentions regarding the Triangle Lot and continue to press the city relative to consciously making a commitment to siting a haul-out facility and boatyard facility on as feasible as possible city property, or declare that no such sites are available. Further, that the Harbor Advisory Board authorized the committee to speak directly with the City Council and City Manager regarding utilizing the Triangle Lot for a boatyard.
Okay. So I have a motion, a second. Do I hear any discussion? Gene?
Yes, could we change that to, there's no potential city facilities, no additional potential city facilities? Because I still like to be able to have an option to see if in the back pocket if we can get that property to the north.
So basically just and either or other properties.
Yeah, I don't want to kill it.
Okay. Did you get that, Polly? Oh. Alan, would you take that in consideration to amend your motion from Gene? And, okay. Okay, any other discussion, Alan?
Nope.
Lynn? I have none. Neil? And Ron? Okay, so we have a motion on the table. We have a second. And all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you, Ron. That's very good. So the other thing that we need to discuss is the recommendation from the ad hoc committee was to obtain from the city definite information regarding the availability of the subject Dynergy building, which apparently they are in the process of doing right now. But I still think that we'd like to put on record that we would like the city council to continue that dialogue. And I will entertain a motion to have that happen. Would anyone like to do that?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I hear a motion. Any second?
I'll second it.
Alan? Any discussion? Ron?
With respect to, even though we serve at the pleasure of the city council, I would suggest amending that motion and substitute city for city council, because it's really an administrative investigation being conducted by the city, by city staff.
So as it reads here, obtained from the city, that's the language that's in it? Is that what you're?
That's not what's in the motion.
Oh, so in the motion, I'd like to amend that to cover city and not just city council, but city employees. You good with that?
Okay, and second it? Okay.
I'll second it.
All right, with that, any other discussion? I hear none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Ron, good job. Thank you, Alan, and whoever else is on the committee. I'd appreciate that.
Hey, Bill, if you don't,
Yeah.
if I can give you a little more information, Ron. Preliminary investigations have been done. Dynergy is basically demolishing all their outbuildings, taking all their outbuildings down, applying for a coastal development permit, including the one in question. They're aware of our interest in it. Their direction at this time is they're getting a quote from a demolition contractor, and this could change, but it looks like if we are seriously interested in it and there's a possibility to obtain it one way, shape, or form, Dynergy prefers that we go to the demolition contractor and deal with them, and that way their permits and everything that they've done with their demo contractor can stay in place. They don't have to amend it all. So I've got a request into them to come and do a tour of that building and kind of see how it's, not that I'm an engineer and expert, but maybe get a couple of folks from the board, and if we get a date, and just go look at the thing and see what we're up against to see how it's built and whatnot inside.
Ron?
A key word is the definition of demolition as it's going to be applied.
Yeah, my understanding, demolition is the contractor comes in and takes it away. Whether they're going to take it away in pieces or cut it up or blow it up, I don't think that matters to Dynergy. They just want it gone.
Well, that's the point. You could bring in a machine and crush it, in which case it has no utilization except for scrap. Or it can be demolished piecemeal and in a way that would facilitate its reasonable reconstruction.
Yeah, that's obviously, if we're interested in it, that's how it would have to come apart. We want to unbolt it and move it. So we'll be pursuing that to see what the possibilities may be there.
So who would you suggest that the ad hoc committee stay in touch with relative to city staff and this matter?
You're probably looking at him. Okay. I'm in contact with Scott Graham and the folks in planning, and I'm in contact with Nina Hartley from Dynegy, and I've sent an email out to their person in Houston that would be the prime connective there. So hopefully we'll hear from them. So stay tuned.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Neil.
In relation to that demolition contract, do you know if that, you said all of their outbuildings, does that include the intake building on Embarcadero?
No, I do not believe it's the intake building. It's everything inside their main facility there. All from the office type buildings at the north end, all the little small metal outbuildings.
Okay. Let's go down here to C2. We have an update from the Capital Improvement Planning Ad Hoc Committee. And that would be Neil. Thank you.
So we have a report here. All the ad hoc members, we met in May as well and worked collectively and individually. And this report is similar in that it's got some bullets followed by recommendations, so I'll read through and then we can go back and visit each of the recommendations after. Continued efforts to understand the city's formula as applied to City of Morro Bay's Harbor Department cost allocation, which is currently reported to be approximately $305,000 per year. The Harbor Department's administrative cost allocation, as determined from time to time by the city's Administrative Services Department, is a significant cost element in the Harbor Department's operating budget. Our current recommendation with this is to confirm with the Harbor Department the line item elements of the current cost allocation, as well as the amount of each line item, and then schedule a meeting with the Harbor Director and the city's Administrative Services Director to obtain a clear understanding of the criteria used to set the Harbor Department's cost allocation. The next point is in May, the committee made no progress in developing a substantive understanding of how the responsibilities for harbor-related property improvements and utilities are distributed among city departments in terms of maintenance and budget. Our current recommendation is to continue to develop an adequate understanding. The next point, relative to working with the Harbor Department to further develop its inventory of harbor-related capital asset items and equipment asset items, as well as a useful life for those items, the Harbor Director was gracious in sharing with the committee the department's development of this data and in its preparation of the department's proposed 2015 and 16 fiscal year operating budget. The department's budget work included enhanced development of maintenance, improvement, and replacement cost projections for these items. It is significant to note that the Harbor Department's budget, as presented by staff to the City Council during the May 21st, 2015 City Budget Workshop, appeared to shift items from the Harbor Department's draft capital improvement budget to the draft operational budget. This requires an explanation by city staff, and as such, our current recommendation to monitor the fiscal 2015 and 16 budget process as it relates to the Harbor Department and acquire an understanding as to why those items from the draft capital improvement budget were apparently shifted to the draft operational budget, which appeared to change the department's operational budget from cost neutral to a deficit. The committee also reviewed and discussed the Harbor Department's portion of management partners. There was a select set of pages within the large document that we paid special attention to. And that was in May 2015 Financial and Organizational Study. The study recommends a number of revenue-increasing measures and recommends substantial changes to the department's organizational structure. And in that report, that was recommendation 34, as well as substantial changes to the department's functions, recommendation 35 and 36. The study recommended changes to the department's organizational structure and functions. Oh, sorry, I misread that. The study's recommended changes to the department's organizational structure and functions appear to rely in part on a case study of harbor operations in Emeryville, California. However, committee research and knowledge of Emeryville's harbor operations indicate that Emeryville is not a suitable comparative harbor in terms of location, configuration, use, revenue, or operation. And now I'll list off the examples that support that. Emeryville Harbor includes 2 compact and closely concentrated conventional marina complexes, Emeryville Cove Yacht Harbor, which is a planned development 430-slip marina complex for pleasure boats of up to 60 feet, and Emeryville Marina, and that is a 400-slip marina complex for pleasure boats up to 65 feet. Attached to this document, which you at home don't have, but board members, you guys all have a copy, there's an image of this marina. Emeryville Cove, Yacht Harbor, and Emeryville Marina are privately operated marinas on public property. Both marinas exist in a relatively small, breakwater protected, man-made harbor within the confines of San Francisco Bay. Both marinas are principally utilized by pleasure vessels, which pay slip fees typical of pleasure boat marinas in high-demand, heavily populated urban environments, and which offer ready access to expansive areas of protected water for cruising. Neither marina complex nor their locations, with the exception of offering slips, encompass Morro Bay's particular mix of vessel-related environments, nature and types of properties and facilities, mix of vessel types, mix of user needs, and mix of services, including a substantial public safety component. Emeryville Cove Yacht Harbor both rents and sells condo slips. Emeryville Cove Yacht Harbor has a condominium owners association. In sum, it would be difficult to select 2 more dissimilar harbors for comparison in terms of configuration, operational necessity, and user revenue. Both Emeryville Marina, operated by Marinas International, as reported by management partners, and Emeryville Cove Yacht Harbor, by virtue of their closely concentrated slip layout, their geographic location, and their pleasure boat clientele rates, provide opportunities for cost-benefit considerations relative to outsourcing that are not applicable to Morro Bay's harbor. So our current recommendation following all that is that the City of Morro Bay be encouraged to base any possible consideration of outsourcing Morro Bay Harbor Department operations and or services on relevant operational comparisons and data. And that is the end of our report. And attached, there is some brief supporting data, which I've handed out to everybody, but didn't keep one for myself. We talked about Emeryville and the population, some of the differences. The current population of greater San Francisco Bay Area is estimated at 7.44 million people, and the current population of Emeryville is estimated to be 10,000 people, and adjacent to Berkeley, which is 112.5 thousand people. So with that, I'll conclude our report.
Thank you, Neil. So at this time, I'd like to ask for any public comment on our ad hoc report for capital expenditures from the public. Hearing none. Anyone? I'm going to bring it back here. And do we have any comments or discussions that we'd like to do? Gene?
As I say, that's an excellent report. And I would hope that the City Council pays attention to our report. Thank you.
Alan?
I would say that the Morro Bay Commercial Fishermen's Organization is appalled at the idea of sourcing out the Harbor Department function.
Lynn? I actually do concur, and I had a chance to read the whole report. I specifically have highlighted the harbor functions, and while management partners actually recommended that the fire department and the police department and every department, I guess, get outsourced as part of their report. If we're going to do that, I think we need to look at a harbor that is applicable to what we do here. And actually, I don't even know if that's something that we even should consider right at this point in time. So, Neil?
I have no comment other than the recommendations that I just read, but I agree that our current harbor department, I think, serves a vital function for our harbor and shouldn't be looked at lightly, and I don't think outsourcing is a good idea. But I also think that, no, I'll leave it at that. No but, yeah.
And I'm going to jump in and say regarding the management partners report, it's not an agendized item. You've got it on your report here. You've reported out on it. If you want to make some recommendations regarding it and do some discussion, let's declare it a future agenda item for the next meeting.
Okay. Ron?
Just a follow-up question on that, and then I'm ready to address your question. Given the city's process in considering the management partner study, is there a particular month meeting that you would suggest that the board put it on its agenda?
I'll look at the agenda planning documentation here and see if it's not. I think we're safe putting it on for August, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's not. Yeah, we're not. It's not slated for July or August or September, and once you get into October, November, the tentative is getting pretty thin on items because that's pretty far out. So it's not on the horizon here for any substantial review by the City Council in July, August, or September. So we're plenty safe with an August presentation and hearing and discussion on that.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Chairman, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Ron.
Anytime that you're ready, Mr. Chairman, I'd have a motion to make regarding the Capital Budget Ad Hoc Committee report.
Yes, Ron.
Move that the board authorize the committee to engage in the dialogue with the harbor director and the city's administrative service director to obtain a clear understanding of the criteria used to set the harbor department cost allocation.
I will second that. We have a motion on the table in a second. Do I hear any discussion? Gene? Alan? Lynn? I don't have any. Neil? Ron? Okay, all in favor of that motion? Say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Thank you. No.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Before we leave this report, what are the board's thoughts about the third recommendation that the committee chairman discussed with you, and that is to monitor the upcoming fiscal budget process and try to achieve an understanding of why budget items were apparently shifted from the draft capital improvement budget to the draft operational budget, unless the harbor director tells us, would advise us that that's not something that we really need to address.
Now, I had a discussion with you, Eric, and you said that that was going to be handled. Is that still correct? Would you like us to refrain from discussing that right now?
It's a work in progress that I'm not prepared to go into any kind of detail on at this point. It's
I think
being addressed.
I think the one thing we need to back up here, this committee was formed primarily to get a handle and to help the harbor department with their finances, and that first recommendation that we just discussed, I mean, we just like to get a real handle of how all these costs are being allocated, and that's why we're here. We're here to help the harbor department, and we're here to help the city, so we get an understanding of the harbor's operation. Okay, Ron, does that answer your question?
Well, I think the harbor director suggested that we hold our water.
That's correct.
And let the process move along a little farther, and we kept advised. I'd like to follow up on what you said. I think it's really important that the board and the city council that the board serves and the public understand that the board's interest, and particularly this committee's interest, in harbor finances, and I mean that in the largest possible sense. The work that the committee is doing now and that it's reporting to the board is really an attempt to achieve an understanding in order to be effective. And much of our information is coming from the harbor director, who certainly understands his finances. There's no question about that. But in our process of educating ourselves, we're coming across things that we have difficulty understanding. And those are the things that, when we seem to be pursuing something, that I think I can speak for the committee, that those are the things that we are pursuing. But I certainly, as one committee member, am happy to take the harbor director's input as to whether we should or should not pursue something, and whether who the appropriate party is to obtain that understanding, that informational understanding or data understanding. We're not trying to suggest that the harbor department doesn't understand its business.
So with that in mind, do you have anything else to say, Ron? Okay. I think we'll end that committee meeting, and we'll let the process flow through. Okay, we are now on C3, which is a continuation of the discussion and recommendations on the Harbor Department Master Fee Schedule. This is something that we started our last meeting. We did get a chance to talk about primarily the fishermen's fees and some others, the piers, North T Pier and the South T Pier slips and fees. But Eric has put together a whole master fee schedule. He's actually created a PowerPoint for the public and for us, and I'd like to pass this over to him so he can discuss what he'd like to discuss with us.
Thank you, and I'm going to go do a little background, and then we'll get into the PowerPoint here, and then I've got a spreadsheet that I'm probably going to need binoculars to see from over here because all the numbers are pretty small, but hopefully it'll be effective. So as you know, we looked at the master fee schedule back on May 7th at the Harbor Advisory Board meeting, looked at a number of the fees. What I had on that master fee schedule under consideration was kind of the bigger ticket items, the larger items that had a larger impact or significant impact. Some of the items that are fairly what I'd call non-controversial or not a large impact were not on the master fee list, but there was Harbor Advisory Board interest in seeing sort of an overall view of the master fee schedule and how it comes up with overall revenues rather than a fee-by-fee basis, and try and come up with making recommendations on an individual fee if you couldn't see how that fee would affect the overall bottom line, and then putting it all in a combined whole. We did take action, a couple actions on the fees. One on the lease administration fees was to raise the current lease administration fees by 50%. And the second action was to leave the commercial fishing slip fees as they were, but to bring back the notion of utility recovery on those slip fees in some way, shape, or form, including some analysis of, which would include some analysis of some costs of possibly some hardware to try and determine what those electrical and water rates are. So that's kind of the background to how we got here. The city is set to look at its master fee schedule on the July 14th meeting and set our master fees in general. There's a CPI adjustment that happens to everything unless there's larger fee changes. Generally those CPI type changes happen as a matter of course. But cost recovery is one of the things that the city council and the city manager wanted to look at, and levels of cost recovery. knowing that some of our fees were less than cost recovery. We did a pretty robust analysis, and that's what we had largely had last meeting. But again, the board, you all wanted a little more holistic view on it, and I spent another couple of week and a half of my life putting together a spreadsheet and learning how to manipulate the different boxes so things add up, so that we could have a better idea of what the numbers are in terms of their overall effects on the bottom line. So I'll launch into my PowerPoint and see if I can operate this newfangled machine. Look at that. So our purpose here is to present the Harbor Advisory Board an overview of all our department fees, including the recommendation levels and board consideration for recommendations to the City Council. So we'll take what the Harbor Advisory Board recommends here and what we had from last time and bring that to the City Council in an overall package here and for hopeful adoption in July. We recommend that you look at the various fees for services and use of city facilities and recommend the department and City Council where we set those fees. We're recommending the fees as proposed in the attached spreadsheet to the staff report, which I'll pull up after this. That's the one I'm going to need binoculars to look at from here. The board recommendations, as I previously stated, they'll be brought to the July 14th City Council meeting for consideration, where there'll be another public hearing to see what the level of interest on the different fees. And that'll be not just the harbor fees, that'll be planning department and police and fire and all the different fees across the board. That'll be brought to City Council on July 14th. So the City of Morro Bay, and this is kind of my some background and some reasoning in how we get here and where our fees come from and why and what we're trying to accomplish here, and tying it together with, we've got operational needs and with our department and our harbor patrol and all the facilities we provide, and then we've got capital needs, all the stuff, all the piers, all the slips, hoist, launch ramp, all those things we provide, and we need to provide for building, maintaining, and replacing those over the years. So we've got a commitment, and we pride ourselves on a pretty high level of service and facilities that we provide to this city and our boaters and all our fishermen and users in as a cost-effective and efficient manner as we can. We've got a range of services and facilities, from slips for commercial fishermen, public boat launch ramp, oil recycling, harbor patrol, lease sites with all the great businesses and everything in between. The lifeguard program, open spaces, our public properties out there for just enjoyment of open spaces. All the things we do as a department, visitor serving things we do, tourism serving things we do, those are all served by the harbor department. But all these facilities and services come at a cost. There's operational costs, like I spoke of. That's primarily personnel. Our city, like most cities, and our department, like most departments in most cities, we're mostly people. The biggest cost is personnel because we provide services. That's the biggest thing we have, and so personnel costs are generally the biggest ones, and those are the operational costs, the year to year. Those also include maintenance and consultant fees, and paying for all the various things we do throughout the year to keep our personnel moving, to keep our facilities going, keep the water flowing, keep the electricity flowing. All that stuff goes into our annual operating budget. And then there's a longer-term capital cost, which are our piers and slips and hoists and on launch ramps and all the other things. Based on analysis that we've done over the last 4 to 6 months leading into this budget setting and going back to my 2 to 3 years of working on the budget here and carrying it forward in a more longer range vision that the City of Morro Bay is now attempting to do, our recent analysis shows that at current fee, permit, and rental rates, which are our fees for our slips, our launch ramp fees, our user fees for our showers, and our rents from our lease sites and our percentage gross rents from our lease sites. All those things combined, there's insufficient revenues to adequately cover all of our operational and capital needs, primarily the capital needs. Those are the big ticket items. Those are the $800,000 North T Pier repair. Those are the $500 and some odd $1,000 Beach Street slip replacements. Those are the big ticket items that we need to put away money over the years to pay for, and it's primarily user fees that those are intended to be paid for from, but we've got all the other fees as well that cover the entire nut that we effectively need to crack. From what we've been able to study and determine and identify, ideally, if money were no object basis, we need about $425,000 of excess annual revenue over our operational needs, over all those things I just described, to put away to handle all of our capital and equipment needs. Again, and that's major repairs, equipment replacements, vehicles, boats, all that stuff. About $425,000 over the next 5 years to meet all those needs. On a bare minimum level, I mean, again, that was sort of, if money were no object and it was flowing from the tap like water, that would be where we'd allocate away to take care of all those needs. If on a bare minimum level, those needs are about $250,000 annually. That includes, like I said, the capital replacement, major maintenance and repair, and equipment replacement and major maintenance. So now that all the power plant outfall leases have ceased, as you know, that was started out as a $250,000 per year lease, increased to $275,000 over the last couple of years. But that revenue's gone. Over the last 3 to 4 years, we've weaned ourselves off of that revenue, and it was a significant hit to a approximate $2 million budget at the time when those revenues were at the peak of, or towards the end of their life. Right now, we're realizing about $90,000 to $160,000 in excess revenue, depending on the year. The economic crash of 2007, 2008 obviously took a big toll. We're largely recovering from that. Our revenues from our lease sites are rebounding very nicely. We don't quite know yet what level they're going to rebound to and where they'll level off at, but we're doing pretty good in terms of our lease site revenues. In the commercial fishing, we bottomed out in the commercial fishing world in 2006, 2007 with landings and activities and a lot of restrictions, and we've emerged from that and things are getting better. The economy is getting stronger. More boats out there and able to survive, and more fish crossing the dock. Two pretty active fish buying operations, while not equivalent to the heyday, back in the day, back in maybe the 1980s. We've rebounded and revenues have come back from that. But still, we're only making in excess about $90,000 to $160,000 in the most recent years, and we'll see where that levels off at. All these costs that we have as a city, from the Harbor Patrol to our administrative services folks to all these facilities, they come from a number of sources, including fees, which are typically user fees. You park in a launch ramp and use a launch ramp, you pay a parking fee. You use a slip, you're a commercial fisherman, you have a slip, you pay a slip fee. You're a lease master tenant at one of our lease sites, you pay the minimum rent and then the percentage of gross rents. All those things add up to our sum total. Our estimated revenues for next year are approximately $1,900,000. $1,555,000 of that approximately comes from our lease site rents. That's our 30 lease sites and 90 odd businesses along the waterfront. And approximately $345,000 or $350,000 comes from all of our user fees. The big chunks of those, if you've seen from our previous meeting, slip and mooring fees, T-pier fees. Those are the two big ticket items, mooring fees, and then all the other little small items that add up. So that amounts to about $345,000 a year. So while user fees at current cost recovery levels cover our bare minimum and provide the facilities that we're used to, it's clear that the lease site revenues make up the lion's share of all of our revenues. They make up any shortfalls on the user fee basis, and they pay for the more general and non-point cost things such as the Harbor Patrol, where you can't, the cost of my patrol staff, you can't reasonably allocate it out to all the different user groups that we have out there. It's like police and fire. Police and fire don't collect a lot of fees as part of their normal day-to-day duties, but they have a pretty large cost, and those costs come from the general sales tax and property tax and those sorts of things. Much of our Harbor Patrol and other facilities and services we provide don't come necessarily directly from user fees. They come from our lease site rents, which pay towards the greater good. So that's kind of the background on how our whole budget is put together. So it's our duty and our responsibility to ensure that these revenues, there's revenues that cover the cost and they're adequately and fairly levied. There are cases of user fees where user fees are generally levied against a user group directly responsible for their use on a cost recovery basis. And it can range anywhere from 100%, where the user in question is pretty much the sole beneficiary of whatever the thing it is being provided, to something less than 100%, where there's a greater public benefit or because the facility or service is provided for a more general or public benefit use. So that's sort of the cost subsidy or the subsidy question in terms of not getting full cost recovery. What's the public benefit? And I think we discussed that last time at the meeting. So those are that's kind of the background on the different fees and the theory on how we try and recover them and put all those pieces together, pieces of the puzzle together, those revenue pieces of the puzzle together, along with the expenditure puzzle, and make it all fit and provide all the services and facilities and things we do. So further decreases we certainly could, and I think our department prides ourselves on being as efficient and cost effective as we can. We're spread pretty thin. We spread our dimes and nickels and pennies pretty far, we think. But obviously there's always potential increases in operational costs, and we're constantly looking at ways to be more efficient and cut potential services if we have to, if there's a cost savings there that makes sense. But we'll never completely bridge the gap between our revenue needs and our expense needs without, more complete and better cost recovery and new and enhanced revenue sources and fees. And we've talked about some things like RV parking along the waterfront. Our launch ramp parking is a relatively new thing implemented in 2010. Where the city's now talking about pay parking along the Embarcadero. There's a number of things that we're looking at to increase revenues for the city, because we've got a large capital backlog of things that need to get done, and that's what we're trying to fund. So for whatever for every source of costs that we have out there and every source of revenue we have out there, we're analyzing it and trying to weigh it in terms of what level of cost recovery is important. And from a capital standpoint, for our facilities, our piers, our slips, fair, equitable, and as complete cost recovery as possible really needs to be implemented. Even though our fee and user fee revenue amounts are, like I said, in about $345,000 range, the vast majority of our revenues come from our leases. We still have a duty and a need to get as much cost recovery as we can for all of the things we provide, and again in a fair and equitable way, and enhance whatever other revenues we can, and come up with new revenue streams to help bridge our revenue gap. So we'll be bringing the spreadsheet with all of our fees. We'll be bringing up here in a bit. The big one that we're kind of carrying back from our last meeting, that we had a lot of discussion last time, was our commercial fishing slip fees. We recognize and honor our longstanding support and work with the commercial fishing industry and the fishermen that we've had over the years. It's been a great relationship. There's been give and take by all of us on all sides for the greater good for all of us to try and achieve the goals and provide the things we want to provide. Things like our annual trip back to Washington, D.C. with fishery and dredging advocacy. The Cable Fishery Liaison Committee is another great example of money that comes from that committee group through the fishermen to provide a lot of great programs and things around our port and Port San Luis as well. Our gear storage yard is another great example, something we built back in the early 90s. Largely with a lot of grant funding to provide the commercial fishermen with their storage needs. The current boatyard work we're working on, the fishing community sustainability plan, and trying to implement some of those recommendations out of there. The Morro Bay Quota Fund to try and secure some quota here and get it grounded here in Morro Bay. Lots of examples of the city and the fishermen working together to try and balance the overall needs and get all of our needs met. The approach at our fees and our approach at providing all of our level of services, we've got a sensible approach to it, but it's tricky to balance, kind of calling it a three-legged stool, to provide all the excellent levels of service, high levels of service and facilities we do. Balancing that with our fiduciary responsibility to recover our costs through fees. We've got a legal mandate to, and recognizing and committing the city's longstanding important support of the commercial fishing industry. That's what I've been trying to work with over the last few months, and trying to balance and figure out, what's the best combination of fees and compromise to come up with the overall revenues that we need within the limits that we have. To ensure that we can supply the facilities and services that we know the city wants to supply, and we know that all of our user groups out there and expect. Like I say, we highly value our relationship with the commercial fishermen, and we've been working with them very collaboratively as partners for all of us doing our part to make sure that everybody can make their ends meet on both sides. So we've been working pretty hard for that. For our slips, so the spreadsheet that we'll have up here in a bit, while I take a certain amount of strange pride in it, in having created it and all the things that it does and calculates automatically, and you can really see, and I'll bring it up on the screen and manipulate it, and you can see what it does. In hindsight, I could have made it a little more simple, and some of the columns get confusing in terms of percentages that are brought up and whatnot. But in terms of our slips, the bottom line, and this is where our $5.48 per foot per month figure comes from, and to get our slips at a cost recovery level that we can replace them over 25 to 30 years, we can maintain them over those 25 to 30 years, we can administer them and put utilities to them over those 25 to 30 years. The bottom line and the most simple way to look at our slips is it takes us approximately $139,000 of revenue per year over our entirety of our slips from Beach Street on down the launch ramp. There's 2,112 linear feet of slips. We need $139,000 at a bare minimum to provide those facilities over the course of 30-odd years. At current revenue levels, what we're receiving, and I'll pull up the spreadsheet here shortly, at current revenue levels, we're at about $129,000 a year. So we're not an ocean or a gulf away. You know, it's really a relatively small stream or maybe a puddle. Fortunately, we're, for whatever reason, however our fees are today, the $4.15 per foot per month, that number was obviously thought of at some point and established for a reason. Somebody, before I got involved in this, established that number, and it's been slowly but surely adjusted with time with CPI. It's not far off, but it's somewhat short of getting exactly where we need to go. So those are kind of the two numbers that we'll focus on, at least in terms of the slips, and there's some other fees we'll cover as we go down the road here. The 139, and it's a combination of revenues from our commercial fishermen when they're here in our slips. They get a 75% discount when they're out of their slips if they want to vacate and put it up for sublease. And then when we sublease those out, the rate is double what their normal rate is. And then our head float berths, which is the slips that are in between the head float and the shore, we've got about 4 of those. Those berths there. In total sum combination, we need $139,000 worth of revenue out of those to make them viable over, again, as a bare minimum, to make them viable over the course of those 30 years. So slip fees vary wildly depending on the year and who's gone and what fisheries are good and where they are, and in our percent and our sublease fees that come in when our fishermen are gone vary wildly depending on how effectively we're able to fill those slips and how many of them are gone. But there's always seems to be a balance. Obviously, the more fishermen are gone, the more slips we have available, the higher our sublease revenue. So the years that the fishing is good elsewhere and there's a lot of people here, obviously if the fishing's good elsewhere, not only will our fishermen be gone, but other fishermen from other areas are going to be in those areas as well. So it typically comes from our recreational boaters to fill that gap. And in generally they do. We don't have a lot of sublease vacancy. Again, it kind of depends on the month and who's gone and for how long, but they always balance each other out. And in general, over the past 8 or 9 years that I've been able to get reliable data that I'm confident in, we've been averaging about $129,500 per year of annual revenue combined from our subleases and our regular slips from those two or three revenue sources from just our slips. So there's always been a little bit of a shortfall there, and trying to find the happy medium to where we can get full cost recovery as possible, and still honor our commitment to the commercial fishermen to provide them the facilities and services they need at a level that they can afford and works for them. Again, it's a balancing act, and it's something we're always trying to strive for. So at our current fee levels, for our slips at least, to to get to that 139, to crack that $139,000 nut. For our slip fees, what we have identified as a need is for 50 cents per foot per month increase, which is basically the cost of the utilities that we pay into those slips every year. The utility cost for us for electric and water is 51 cents per foot per month from all the data that I've analyzed over the last few years. So 50 cents, like a little better round number, so that's what we're recommending for an increase to the slip fees to recover those utilities. And that over the course of the year, assuming relatively normal year with normal vacancy and normal subleasing patterns, we're estimating that our annual revenue would be $139,530. And again, these are estimated revenues, and we'll get to our spreadsheet here in a minute. But the goal is really to try and get from this to this. I mean, that's what we all want. I mean, things like that embarrass me. And I know our fishermen, we've got a number of them that help us out wherever they can. They replace our slips where they can because we're stretched thin, both with money and with personnel. So that's always our goal. And we're trying to get to that point. So I'll pull up the spreadsheet, and if I can get AGP video to come out and pull up the numbers, and I'll bring my binoculars out so I can see it. So what I'm hoping for tonight is we'll look at the overall spreadsheet, and I can manipulate it and change some numbers on it. But basically, with the numbers that we have, we're at near cost recovery at most, 100% cost recovery on the recommended levels. Our slip fees, again, at not full cost recovery rates, but given our transient slip rates and our vacancy, with that modest increase and at our projected levels, it looks like we will get to that 100% cost recovery rate. So essentially the transient backfill is sufficient to make up the difference to get us to that $139,000 nut. HEP, if you guys don't mind coming out and pulling up another spreadsheet for me there. Or maybe I'll go do it. Nope, thank you. Okay, can anybody see that? Because I can't. So, and we'll go into a little housekeeping here. We've got several sets of fees here that we've got some conflicts of interest with our board members. For ease of logistics here, Neil's conflicted on our slip fees. Gene's conflicted on our mooring fees. Probably best, since we've got a few members of the audience here, and then we'll as soon as I shut up, we can get to public comment. Probably best I'm recommending we go through the slip fees first. Maybe look at the pier rates right after that, since they're very related. And then we can get Neil out of the room and then back in the room. And then we can go on down into the rest of the fees minus the mooring fees. Hopefully knock those out. And once those are knocked out, we can go to the mooring fees. Then we can kick Gene out and bring him back.
Am I out for the pier fees also, or just the slip fees?
Just the slip fees.
Just slip fees, okay.
Because you are currently a slip renter. Sure.
Okay, you want to hold public comment, or do you want to discuss the fees first?
No, normally we go to public comment here, so
okay.
I don't think, let me just make a quick look down my list here.
Eric, before we go to public comment, could you, I noticed that there is a conclusion section in your report.
Yes.
Are you ready to you want to do that after the spreadsheet presentation?
No, I'm going to go down, looking at my staff report. I want to hit on a few things here in the staff report, and then we'll get to public comment so we can get everything in here. The Harbor Advisory Board at the May meeting, like I said, you made a vote to recommend leaving the slip fees where they were, but to bring back utilities, have another second look at utilities, which we've done. Basically, we've estimated utility cost to be 51 cents per foot per month out of water and electricity combined. Our individual sets of slips are metered for water and electricity, but individual slips are not. The cost to try and install some sort of a system to monitor that electrical use would be about $25,000 for materials and labor. I think that's one of the things that the board wanted last time, is what a cost might be. For water, there's no real practical way of individually monitoring or metering water. There's not really equipment out there that in any kind of a cost-effective manner that we can individually meter slips. The only way, and it would be a strange way of doing it, would be put in some kind of coin or key card or token-operated water where you put in coins for water, but then, I mean, part of it's cost recovery, part of it's conservation. I've had a couple of conversations with folks that if it was a coin-operated, it's going to encourage you to try and wash as fast as you can, as quickly as you can, and use as much water as you can in a short period of time because you can't turn the meter off and on. It's just coin-op water for that. Just it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's possible. So I just wanted to bring in some costs in terms of what it might cost to put cost recovery in electricity. A second way, or a second method of cost recovery, that's really the third method, metering it and monitoring it. A second method, at least on my staff report, is to regularly bill the users in arrears, because we do individually meter whole sets of slips with water and electricity. So I could say, you know, the slips between Giovanni's Fish Market and House of Juju restaurant below the Anchor Memorial Park, I've got an electric meter there and I've got a water meter there, and I could divide that number evenly over those slips over the course of a month, and we could bill that in arrears. But the simplest method is really on an annual basis, figure out what the level of utility cost is per year, and it doesn't vary widely from year to year. It really changes with a CPI like everything else, but just automatically to build it into the slip fees, which at this point in time, it's 50 cents per foot per month. So again, the master fee spreadsheet up here, we totalize. I don't know how useful that'll be on that small a scale. But what we're trying to present here is an overall existing master fee structure with the harbor fund shown. As you spoke, Ron and Neil, in your earlier ad hoc report, what the City Council has right now in terms of my budget and what I've presented to the Harbor Advisory Board are different. That will be reconciled at a point to be determined. But this year, at least when I did our initial budget and estimated revenues, our excess revenue to go into accumulation for all this other stuff was somewhat paltry $12,000. That is a very, very, very conservative estimate. Our estimates for the last 3 years have been very conservative. The actual numbers are coming in the, as I earlier reported, in the $90,000 to $160,000 range, just because our percent gross revenues are on a nice, pretty steep rate up, recovering from the economic downturn. But at some point, those are going to level off. We don't know where they are. So I suspect we'll have more than 12,000, but we're not budgeting for more than that, just because we're being very fiscally conservative and not over budgeting, because, as you know, if you plan to spend more than you actually get, that's a problem and something we don't want to do. So again, the excess revenues are what where our funding really comes from for our capital needs. Operating budget handles the day-to-day and month-to-month stuff. The capital handles the big-ticket items, and that's our war chest, our accumulation fund that we pulled. The $800,000 for the North T Pier, and we're pulling off for our Beach Street slips here pretty soon. That's our big war chest that we pull that money off of, and that's where the excess comes from. So we have been putting back in, like I said, over the last few years, and things are rebuilding, but we're spending a lot too. We've got some pretty large capital needs coming up on the very near horizon. In fact, they're here with us right now. So again, we're looking at trying to get as much cost recovery in a fair and equitable way as possible. So again, we'll be bringing this back to the City Council at the July meeting, the only meeting in July. They're dark on the second meeting. So the first meeting in July is July 14th, and if we have a desire to, we can manipulate the spreadsheet. But again, for slip fees, really the bottom line is $139,000 per year out of the combination of slip and sublease and vacancy and 10% discount for paying a year in advance and the head float berth, making up that $139,000 nut, and we're not that far off with what we've got, and with a modest increase we can get there, and then we can. Maybe we get past that with Neil and get Neil back and go over the entirety of the rest of it. We made a recommendation last time on the lease fees, lease administration fees, which we can revisit, and then all the other ones, and see where we get by the end of the night, and hopefully we can wrap it up. And with that, I'll stop talking.
As Ron stated, your recommendation is column number E that we have here in front of us. Is that correct?
Correct. So, column E, proposed rate. So the columns, and thanks for bringing that up, Bill, the columns to really focus on are obviously column A, which is the description of the fee, current rate, column B. Ignore column C. On an individual basis, it's interesting, but it's not very helpful. I'm sorry, column D. Column C is our estimated 100% cost recovery rate. Column D, not super useful. Column E, our proposed and recommended rate. F, not real helpful. G, H, and I are more the operative ones. G and H really are the revenue. G is the revenue at current rates without changing a thing, and H is at the proposed rates on a long column, column E, and then I is if everything was at 100% cost recovery. But things get deceiving with the slip rates in that, again, it's an estimated revenue that we're expecting. If I were to just calculate out our total slip number of feet at a given rate per foot per month, it would give me a number, but because we have the 75% discount for when people are vacant, we've got a 10% discount for when people want to pay in a year in advance, which is essentially a free month. It's always going to be an estimate because we don't know what the vacancies and everything else are and who's going to pay in advance. So, again, it's the combination of the four rates: the two transient rates, the monthly and the daily, and then the head float berth, along with our regular slip holders that make up the sum total that we need to get to 139,000.
So the bottom line here is that if we left it exactly as you said here in column E, we would be in a deficit of $30,280. Is that correct? For the 100% recovery? Is that how I'm reading this?
You're going to have to rephrase that, and let's...
Well, in other words, your proposed rate in trying to get the 100% cost recovery, we are going to be short with your proposed rate $30,280. Is that correct or incorrect?
Stand by. Yeah. So down. So between columns G and H.
Well, actually, the difference between column H and I.
We've got AGP. If I didn't see you sitting there, can you run over? Go to the very bottom of the spreadsheet. Run her on down. There you go.
The difference between H and I is $30,280 on my form that I have here in front of me.
Between the columns G and H, the difference is $19,829.
Okay, that's
and
correct.
Of all the fees, in the entirety of the fees. So the column G is the current rate. Column H is
right. That's
proposed
correct.
rate.
You're proposing to raise it $19,000.
Correct.
So
column I is
to
over
get
at
100% cost recovery.
But what gets, for lack of a better word, kind of wonky in there is
wonky.
Yeah, wonky. It's a technical term. Because these are estimated revenues with the slip rates and the sublease rates, with the slip rates in and of themselves isolated, the column H, the proposed revenue rate, gets us to the 100% cost recovery in sum total. If you just look at row 1, you're going to be calculating $5.48 times 2,112 feet of slips to come up with $115,410. That's if you discount the vacancy revenue we get, the subleasing revenue we get, and actually that and combined with the head float berth rate, that would be your total $139,000. Because this transient slip rate makes it up, we don't need to be at $5.48 for our commercial fishing slips because we have the sublease to make it up.
Because the 100% cost recovery estimate really should be nothing in the transient slips, correct? I mean, is that what you're trying to, I mean, that's why.
In a way, you could say that, yes.
Yeah,
That's where things get wonky because as I've
Okay,
created
I
the
understand
spreadsheet
now.
over the months,
Okay.
that far right column, 100% cost recovery rate, gets
Right.
skewed because it's trying to look at everything individually isolated, and that's not how we're looking at it. We're trying to put it all together as a package.
I think that the one recommendation, though, on this spreadsheet, when you have the total of column H says 92.3%, and then column I is 100%, it leads you to believe that we're about 7.5% off.
It does.
Okay.
And that's why I had the caveat, don't pay too much attention to those percentages because they.
Okay. Okay then.
It's my fault in that the way I created this to try and calculate these things, unforeseen consequences and how they added up. What I was trying to get at with this spreadsheet was, and I should have eliminated all the percentages, just a bottom line dollar number that things add up to, and then individual fee by fee, what recovery rate it's at, and if it's at 100%, it's 100%. If it's at some other percent, the sum total being something different. So yeah, that's where those columns get confusing. So
okay,
I'd say before we get too much crazier on discussion, let's see if we've got any public comment.
Okay. All right. At this point in time, we're going to offer the public to come up to discuss any of our discussion and the master fee schedule here, or do you have anything to say regarding this? Okay. Hearing none. You'd like to say something?
I'm public right now, right?
Okay, yeah.
You are public.
So this might pertain, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it when I get back up there, so I just wanted to touch on it now. It was one of your points about water usage. Should I talk about that now, or can I talk about...
As it pertains to slip fees, yeah.
Well, I'll let you decide.
What are you...
Another potential method to reduce water costs at the slips.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
That's just general public comment. Yeah.
So, Neil Maloney, Morro Bay Oyster Company, board member. But as Morro Bay Oyster Company, I use fresh water down at my slip. I don't need to use fresh water. It's just the only thing that's available to me there currently. We use the fresh water to rinse off the baby oysters in our nursery. I run the hose for about 30 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, but during those 30 minutes, it's not constantly running. It's running in spurts during a 30-minute period. If I had a saltwater pump down there, pumping salt water, I could use that water just as easily. I've done basic research, finding washdown pumps that range from anywhere from $175, and that gets you like 4 gallons a minute up to $1,000 and $1,000, and that gets you like 9 gallons a minute. Not sure how many gallons a minute I need to wash my product, but as I said, this is kind of the beginning of my research process to be proactive because, California doesn't have a lot of water right now. We're dealing with this right now with these costs and looking at proactively finding ways to reduce our water impact. But if the city was able to provide saltwater washdown pumps, there might be other boats that could benefit from that as well. That's my input on that.
Thank you, Neil. Any other public comment?
Pirate commercial fishing, live aboard.
Your name?
Steve. Anyways, the boats on the bay and all of us on the bay are real important to the whole coast and to the city. And ways to recover money. I mean, I watch the T-bed meetings and it almost makes me throw up. But they're bragging about all the money they've collected from all the people that come here because they love coming here. Maybe you ought to see a way to funnel some of that money so we could have fireworks, and also so that we can have us stay here and not have our rents being raised so outrageously high all at once just to meet. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of money's wasted.
Thank you.
Hi. Brian Williamson, commercial fisherman. I just have a couple questions that I'm not really clear on, and this is directed to Eric. With your spreadsheet and your projections there, you're proposing to the 50 cents per foot. So if you're in a 40-foot slip, you're talking about $20 more a month.
Correct. Yeah, it's, your slips are all the rates are on a per foot per month basis.
Right, but this 50, I'm just get it straight in my head. This 50 cents you're talking about, because see, I've heard some scuttlebutt out on the docks that talking about, oh, they're going to triple your rates and all kinds.
No, that's it.
So you're talking
50 cents per foot per month.
Yep.
So that's
okay,
a 40-foot
and
boat, or
then in addition to try to do something with water and electric, or just
No,
that, and,
no,
that solves the problem.
that 50 cents at least cracks it's equivalent to what we're paying for in water and electricity now for your slip. So we're calling it recovery for utilities.
All right, that's all. I
Adding
just
that
want to
back
know
on.
what that is.
Okay. Hearing no more public comment here, I'll take this back to the board and discussion. Eric? Gene? Alan?
We're talking about 100% cost recovery now. I just wanted to clarify that historically we haven't had 100% cost recovery with the commercial fishing slips. So this would be a change to change that policy of giving the commercial fishermen a break. And so it's not just a new fee. It's my point.
Okay. Lynn?
When were the commercial fishing slip rates changed last?
They've changed with CPI generally, or some kind of a small inflationary factor for the last 7 or 8 years. We had a break in there. When I started in the early 90s in our department, I think we went for probably into the early 2000s without raising any city fees. All the city fees stayed flat into the early 2000s, and then they started getting CPI adjustments. At that point, whether in the mid-90s to the early 2000s, did the mid-90s rate jump drastically in the early 2000s, or did it just pick up where it went off? I think it just picked up where it left off and kept creeping up with the annual CPIs that it's done since then. But as I spoke earlier, it's not that far off from where it was, and I'm assuming somebody must have done some analysis in the past to get at the figure they're at now. When were they last raised? I don't know when they were last raised in any kind of in any other than a CPI method. Not in a long time ago. They've stayed pretty steady. Like I said, if they were raised between that gap when nothing was raised and then suddenly raised up, I can't answer that if they were or not. I'm kind of assuming they just kept on with CPI after that.
Okay, Lynn?
That's all.
Ron?
A key point in this discussion for me lies in the conclusion section of staff report on this agenda item. Quote, as currently projected and without a combination of new and/or enhanced revenue sources, including adequate cost recovery via our various fees, current revenues will not support the capital needs of the waterfront's future. For instance, if we're collecting $129,000 now and $100 on the slips, and $139,000 is break even, if you will, on the maintenance of the slips and on their amortized 30-year capital improvement, if that $10,000 isn't made up in any given year, that $10,000 is going to come out of the there will be $10,000 that won't go into the capital allocation fund, not just for those slips, but for the waterfront. During the May 28th Harbor Advisory Board meeting, the board, as Eric pointed out, and the public were actually, he didn't say this exactly, were presented with information concerning commercial fishing vessel moorage rates, both in Morro Bay and in 5 other California coastal harbors. The current rate for Morro Bay's 50 slips was $4.15 per foot per month. The average commercial fishing vessel rate in the 5 other harbors was $9.37 per foot per month. As Eric did point out tonight, during the May 28th meeting, the board voted to recommend the Morro Bay commercial fishing vessel slip rate remain at $4.15 per foot per month, which by definition means, if there is not 100% cost recovery, it means by definition that all paying users in the Tidelands Trust lands, which include the Harbor Enterprise Zone, are subsidizing the commercial vessel slip rate. As Eric also pointed out, when the board recommended approval that for the master recommended the $4.15 figure stay the same for commercial fishing vessels, it also recognized that that rate did not recover the cost of utilities as reported to us by the Harbor Department. It's my conviction that each user of cities' slips needs to pay for utility cost recovery. For commercial fishing vessel slips, that amounts to apparently 15 cents per foot per month. 50 cents per foot per month. So I encourage the users of the slips to agree to pay for utility cost recovery, which includes me. And I encourage the Harbor Advisory Board to recommend that the Harbor Master Fee Schedule include a 50 cent per foot per month utility charge.
Is that a motion, Ron? Okay. Any other discussion? Gene?
Yes, as I look at this chart here, the cost recovery right now, the current rate is like 75%, and our proposed rate would be about 85%, not 100%.
Yes, and that's, again, I'll sort of caution on looking at percentages. That 548 is if there were no other revenues from those slips. That's strictly for that 2,112 square feet. That's what we need to recover it. We've got the sublease revenue that backs that up. That you have to add that in to get to the sum total.
Alan?
I think that just with regards to the commercial fishing slips, it would be a lot easier to understand if we just abandoned the per foot way of and just talked about the totals of what the revenue is and what the cost is, because once you start talking about so much per foot, there are so many variables that don't hold still that you can never really make any statements that make any sense. So, you know, and I talked with Eric about this. What's important to know is that the cost is $139,000 roughly, and that the projected revenue, I think this year was 129. I think Eric says now it's 118 based on the latest figures. So the commercial slips are not generating 100% cost recovery. If the 50 cents was added, then he estimates that it would generate 100% cost recovery, in spite of the fact that these percentages don't say that. Additionally, I would like to say that there is the caveat that the 100% cost recovery was based on the service being solely a benefit to the people that were getting it. And previously, it's been viewed that the commercial fishing industry gives benefits to the community in other ways that make it reasonable to not charge them the full rate on the slip. I mean, that's the way that it always was based. And as far as the utilities not being covered in the current amount, originally I'm told when back during Rick Algert's time when they agreed on the system of a certain rate, and then it would go up by the CPI every year. At that time, the utilities were figured in, and coming back and adding utilities on now is technically, you know, it's not necessarily what is supposed to be done, but I'll leave that to you.
And I just want to add and reiterate that it's been the council and the city's position in support, you know, in this mutual support and in collaboration with the industry that, you know, we're not charging market rates. We got way past that last time, but it was talked about. But it's been the city's policy to rent these slips out as cheaply as possible, as inexpensively as possible, in support of the commercial fleet. And I think these numbers reflect that. And we're able to keep it as low as possible because we are, and offer the 75% discount and the 10% discount for annual paying in advance, because primarily we've got those sublease rates that make up the difference. That to get to that $139,000 bottom line, we are able to get there. We should be able to get there with a modest increase in sum total. So that's where the columns get, to use my term again, kind of wonky. Because you've got to kind of look at those first four rows together. That's the total revenue we get from that facility, whether it's a commercial fisherman using it, whether it's a recreational boater on sublease using it. It's the conglomeration of their utility costs and their wear and tear and everything that's the sum total, and it's a sum total game, so we got to consider them all together. That's sort of my view of looking at it, and that's why we're able to if you go line by in an individual line, you can say, well, we're not at full cost recovery on an individual per dollar per foot basis on our commercial rates. Yeah, it's a little less, but it's because we can make it up on the other end on subleasing.
Okay, Ron, would you like to make a motion with your discussion?
Move that the harbor master fee schedule, and this is for the next fiscal year, Eric, is that correct?
Correct, 15-16.
Master fee schedule for fiscal 2015-2016 include a 50-cent per foot per month utility charge for city slips.
I'll second it. So we have a first and we have a second. We have any discussion? Hearing none? You do.
Yes, you said that it should be 50 cents for utilities recovery. But is that what we really want to say? Don't you want to, since in historically, we have not been charging for utilities to keep it simple, just even though we understand that that is making up the equivalent cost of utilities, to keep it at the per foot per month rate. Saying utilities is bringing in another element.
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting point. It just so happens. Say again?
How about if I just amend?
Yeah.
I'm happy to amend my motion to say that move that the harbor master fee schedule for fiscal 2015-16 for the city's slips increase to $4.
65 cents.
No. Sorry. Is that? Oh, yes. Yes, you're quite right. Thank you. Thank you for that. $4.65 in recognition of unrecovered utility costs.
Okay. And I will concur and second that also. Okay, any discussion? Ron?
every dime that isn't recovered for the cost of any of the waterfront facilities and services, in my mind, is a dime that doesn't go into the capital fund. And the capital fund is desperate. There are hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of projected capital requirements for slips and docks and all kinds of things that the Harbor Department has painstakingly put together and presented us with. And there is not even a fraction of the revenue necessary to address that. So any dime that in my opinion it can reasonably be contributed to that, it needs to be contributed.
Any other discussion, Gene?
Yes. My guess is when we first put this master fee schedule together, and I can't remember that far back, utility costs have probably risen higher percentage-wise. So.
Okay. I'm going to call a vote here. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Any abstains? Okay. Okay, the motion passes. Now, do we, on a point of clarification, do we need to make a motion for this whole master fee schedule, or is that really the only thing that we need to do?
So,
I mean, that was what I was, or do we need to now discuss the rest of the line items?
I'd like to get through the rest of it. Neil's back. We're past the slips. We'll take the moorings.
We'll just raise the moorings 100%, Gene. Is that okay?
We'll take them after.
No, I'm just kidding. I apologize.
It's certainly within our purview in exercise to go through these line by line. I'll leave that up to you how you want to look at them. I could highlight some of the more pertinent ones and salient ones, if need be, and we can sort of look at the bottom line revenue dollar-wise and take it that way.
Let me just ask the board's consensus here. I'm okay with Eric maybe highlighting a couple points here. I looked through this myself. I did study it. I don't see anything abnormal about it. I think, as I shared with Eric, if we are now at 100% cost recovery right now, there's a couple other things maybe we want to look at is the parking at the, excuse me, but maybe we can just have you go over a couple things, and I mean, I don't know, what do you think, folks? Gene, do you think we should go line by line? All 21?
Well, why don't we just look at the privately owned moorings first, and then I can step down and come back.
Okay. All right, let's do that. Okay, thanks, Gene.
So that is an AGP, if you don't mind going to item 8, right? Yeah. I don't know what line number that is on the spreadsheet, but item 8. So our private moorings, that's for the majority. So there's 125 moorings in town. Marina Square leases a block of 25 at the very north end. That's in their lease. I'm actually renegotiating that lease right now. Morba Yacht Club has the next block of 25 in a lease that's set and done. The rest of the moorings, the rest of the 75, we own, I think 10, Polly, right? We counted the other day. We own 10 moorings that we rent out, which is another line item here. And the rest are all privately owned by individual folks that lease a small block of mud from us to put their mooring on and have their boats on. So that fee currently is $81.10 per month. Based on my analysis, we are at or even slightly exceeding 100% cost recovery to administer those. There's not a lot of cost going into it, so there's not a lot of need to do anything with that. It's a pretty big chunk of revenue, $61,200 per year, so it definitely adds up. But at this point, we're at 100% cost recovery. There's no real market comparable, unlike the rental rates if you're renting a mall, which we'll get to next, but there's no real market comparable, so $81.10 per month is our current rate, and that'll just continue to go up by CPI. Any questions on that rate?
Ron?
Is the Harbor Department content with that line item?
Yes.
Personally, I'm fine with it. I don't.
I'm fine with it too.
I don't think we need to make a motion relative to that, and let's bring Jane back if you agree, Mr. Chair.
I agree. Alan, do you have any issues? Lynn? Okay.
I would say, just to be safe, make a motion, approve it. That way, if we approve the larger spreadsheet and that's on there, he's sort of technically voting on it, but
okay.
Just to make it simple.
Ron, would you make a motion, please?
Move that the private moorings line item in the proposed harbor master fee schedule for 2015, fiscal 2015-2016 be accepted by the Harbor Advisory Board as reasonable.
I'll second that. We have a first and a second. Do I hear any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Gene, come on back. We just raised it 1,000% instead, Gene. Yeah. It's okay. No, we made a motion to leave it as is and seconded it, and so. Okay, Eric, why don't you make some highlights, and then, or do we want to go line by line item, folks?
I mean, I can.
Lynn?
Well, perhaps you could highlight, but if we had any questions on a particular item, we could bring it up.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest.
Okay.
I'll go down through some of the ones that
we've
got some changes on, or other ones that may need clarification. Then if you've got another one that I didn't mention, we'll bring it up.
Okay. Go for it,
Eric. Line 5, T-Pier, per foot per day. A little bit of a different rate, 25 cents per foot per day on the T-Piers. Our 100% recovery rate from the best we can tell is 30 cents per foot per day. A big cost on the T-Piers is the South T-Pier loan. For some reason that burned down. We didn't get insurance to pay for that, and we had to take out a $2 million loan for that. So unfortunately that is a big ticket item to recover. The good news on that, I think there's 7 or 8 years left on that loan and we're done. So that $134,000 and change payment per year will be disappearing relatively shortly.
Would the cost on the T-Pier go down at that point?
The way I amortize that in my analysis here to get my 30 cents, I amortized that loan, even though it's a 30-year loan. I spread it out over 60 years just because at 30 years we're not going to tear down the pier and build a new one. It's just going to kind of, the pier's an oddball in that unless something like the pier burns down, the North T Pier, you're never going to tear it down and rebuild it, but you've got major capital costs. I treated it more as a 60-year capital cost and amortize it over because 30 years beyond the end of that life of that loan, you know, knock on wood, and hopefully that pier's still there in good shape with given good maintenance over the years. It'll just perpetuate on, so amortize it over further years is the methodology I did on that. And if you look at, so 25 cents on it, so we'll go back to the individual, and we'll point you out to the recovery rates. If you just look at a pure percent recovery rate, you're about 83 cents, or 83%. If you look at just the pure slip rate, 415 versus 548, if you put that independently, it's relatively the same. It's 84.5%. So at the rate you just voted on. So to me, that's the good case of a sort of a low rate or a subsidized rate to support the commercial fishing fleet. And that's what I've recommended we leave it at. It is, if you cost it out per foot, more expensive to be on the pier than in a slip. But that's just the cost of providing it. Piers are more expensive, even though slip in most cases is more desirable. So I'm recommending to leave that the way it is. And then T-Pier Electric, We're not at full cost recovery on that. It's easy we do have meters on that. It is easy to parse that out. Our cost recovery rate, so we do charge on the T-pairs if you're plugged in. You're currently paid $2.35 a day. Our actual costs are $2.58 a day, so I've recommended we move that up, which will scooch up the revenue by about $1,000 a year and better account for that. So those two items of note. City moorings, line 7. Any other questions on those? Alan?
I don't understand how the cost for a boat plugged in could be $2. I mean, that's a lot of money in the course of a month. What does that come out to? 30 days at $258? Well, no, it's 75.
70 some odd dollars.
When you think about your household bill and you're running lights and the washing machine, the refrigerator, and typically on a boat, a guy might run a light bulb. I don't understand how that works.
That is as metered.
Is that the standard rate? I mean, the low rate?
Yeah, where that number actually came from originally, it's been creeping up with CPI to where it is now. Where it actually originally came from, I couldn't tell you. It started, I would assume, in the analysis that I did bore it out, I'm assuming that some look back was done on, okay, here's what the cost was, here's how many boats we had, and just spread it out evenly over the number of boats, where some guys got just a light bulb and some guys got the full refrigerator and battery charger and the whole 9 yards going, and in sum total, that's the cost. That's the actual cost. It goes out through all those plugs.
Gene?
Does the Coast Guard, how do they pay?
They've got their whole separate system that's metered, including water on the pier. They've got their own water meters.
Bill, you asked me how that compares with other ports that I go to. That's a little high. I know the T-Pier guys aren't particularly happy about that.
But they are paying for each day that they're plugged in. If
Correct.
they take their plug out, then they don't pay.
They don't pay. If they don't need the electricity, they don't.
So they really do have a choice as to controlling it themselves, and it would be up to them to
Thank you, Lynn.
control it.
Good point.
Thank you. Anything else on that?
Ron? Okay.
So we went through the private moorings, the city moorings, the 10 that we own. We're currently at $215 per month. The rate out there, the market rate out there, we're at full cost recovery. Moorings generally, they're not big money makers. It costs a fair amount to put the block down and maintain it over the years. Every other year you got to pull it. Not a huge money maker, but it is a revenue source. On the moorings, we're really obligated to charge a market rate because we're out there competing with everybody else. Our rates used to be probably $75 to close to $100 below the market rate. Over the last few years, we've been creeping it up about $20 per year to try and catch back up to the market. We're recommending we set it at $235 this year. It's currently at $215. That's a $20 increase, and that would get us a little closer to the $250 average that you're out there if you're going to go rent a mooring from Marina Square on the private market from some of those private owners, or sometimes even more. Sometimes for the bigger moorings are even more. Ours are on the average size, small to medium size in terms of the size boat they can take. So we'd probably leave them after this increase probably fairly status quo, and then offering, as municipalities often do, offering a lower cost alternative than the private market. So that's wouldn't anticipate any more big changes on that, but that would get us to a little more market parity. Questions on that?
You're talking about line item number 7, correct?
Correct.
So it says here 215 is the current rate, and then 100% cost recovery is at $230. Is you were
$235.
$235.
In my note there, the quote unquote cost recovery is really market rate recovery.
I just have the wrong sheet of paper, I guess.
Any other questions on that? Okay, moving on. I don't see anything that needs much for changing. Our dry storage daily rate, we've increased our utilization of that lately. That we set at $2.85 per day, and it was based. It historically has not been based on any square footage thing. It was for our dirt yard out where the baiters are, to help mainly commercial fishermen if they have some oddball storage needs, or some of our recreational boaters have used it as well. So if you came in with a 1 pallet of crab pots, it would be $2.85 a day, or if you came in with 50 pallets of crab pots, it'd be the same. What I'm recommending is to make that $2.85 per day, which amounts to 85 some odd dollars per month, close to what you can get out in the free market if you're going to go rent that kind of space. And it's basically a standard size car space is what we would recommend to the city council to change it to 8.5 by 20. So if you needed something larger, you're going to pay more for some more volume there. So that one we'd be recommending to do it on a per square footage basis rather than just a flat 285. Any questions on that? And so out of the yard, this year in particular with our crab fishermen, we've looking like we're probably going to have more demand on that space than we have space for. So we're going to have to develop a policy and procedure to dole those spaces out, but trying to make it available to everybody that needs try not to make it a permanent storage space for any one person. I mean, that's what the fisherman's gear storage is for, and that's what your driveway's for and your friend's ranch. But we're trying to make it for a sort of an interim basis and an as-needed basis when people have sort of transitory storage needs that they need to accommodate. We've got an outlet for them. T-pier hoist, it's current. Yep, Lynn?
The boats that are now in the triangle lot, are they being charged at all, or are those people?
No, those are. If you look on the city's Facebook page, we own that lot. We're in the process of getting those moved out. We're trying to notify people, find them. No, that's going to go to day use only parking. Got a big stack of crab pots in there now that are going to need to move on. That suddenly showed up too. But everybody's staging their gear everywhere, and we're just trying to find permanent homes for them. So no, those. We are exploring with the city manager whether we want to try and set aside some of that lot for some interim storage space for boaters or crab fishermen or whoever fishermen to store gear. But right now we're just trying to get all that old stuff that's been kind of abandoned out of there and get it cleared up for parking and set up some parking in there.
Okay.
Question? This doesn't relate, but you're looking at turning the entire T-pier into parking temporarily, is that right?
T-pier.
I mean, not T-pier, I'm Triangle.
Triangle?
Sorry.
Yeah, for immediate near future, yeah, we're going to try and set up more organized parking, and then it'll allow that to just be an extension of the Front Street parking lot, and then the Maritime Museum will build in. But I'm digressing, and so the boatyard thing, all that will start playing into it. The Maritime Museum, all that will come on into the future. T-pier hoist. We're recommending raising that $1. Basically, we've got a per hour, per use, but we generally just charge the one per use fee. Currently at $13. Cost recovery from a little further analysis on that for building that thing and maintaining over the years, $14. So raising that $1. A lot of harbors have them coin operated. We haven't quite got to that level yet. We'll keep sticking with the 13 or 14 recommended $14 per hour. Any questions on that? Or per use? Sorry. Nope. Lease side administration. If you notice at our last meeting, you folks recommended raising all of those fees 50%. So line 19. Oh, I've skipped ahead. I'll get back to liveaboards. Line 19, it's currently at $1,000 for a master lease approval. Full cost recovery is at least double that for the amount of time we've got to put into it. 50% above that would be $1,500 as recommended by the Harbor Advisory Board. I'm still recommending we keep it at $2,000 just because we put a lot of time into those master leases and a lot of staff time, so we're trying to get better cost recovery out of that. Lease administration. For leases requiring city council approval, meaning a lease that I had to take to city council for an amendment to.
Ron?
Eric, before you leave that last item,
Yep.
Lease administration.
Yep.
What is the typical what is the typical term of a master lease? In other words, how often would a master leaseholder have to deal with the fee, irrespective of how much it is?
Our terms vary anywhere from the Santa Monica seafood lease we just did to 10 years to 50 years. Average 30 to 45. The larger lease sites are getting generally out there, the ones that have redeveloped. There's probably a couple, I think I estimated 3 master lease approvals per year, because we've got a number of leases that are coming up on expiration, so about 3 per year.
That's interesting, but that really wasn't where I was headed. I was mentally amortizing the $2,000. So at a minimum, it's amortized over 10 years, and at a maximum, it's amortized over 50 years. The average being 30 to 40 years. Okay, thank you.
It's just the pure cost of staff time to administer that negotiation, that lease.
Neil?
And does that take into effect, or does that count when you're doing lease extensions as well?
No, that's the next item.
Okay.
Lease administration, action requiring city council approval. So
Okay.
a lease that was up for amendment for whatever reason, an assignment of a lease from somebody to somebody else, those sorts of things that we have to take to city council, write staff reports and do all that. 500 is per action is our current rate. Our actual cost recovery rate per the study and analysis we did was 640. The Harbor Advisory Board, again, last time recommended raising everything 50%. That would have brought that up to 750, which is actually above the 100% recovery rate. So I would be recommending my city council, let's just keep it at 640 because that's what our cost is. And then on leases that require administrative approval, which mostly is subleases. Let's say Marina Square gets a new subtenant, one of the units, they come to us. We don't need to go to city council for approval of any of those anymore. Those are all administrative, done in my office. Fairly low-key actions. The current rate on that is 175. You voted to increase that by 1.5 times. That would, we're still recommending keep it at 240. 240 is our actual cost recovery amount, so slight variation there. Go back to liveaboard fees. Based on our analysis of what it costs to administer that program and the permits and the inspections. Current liveaboard permit administration, which is taking your money, tracking it, writing letters, all the back office paperwork type stuff per fee, and these permits are biannual permits, so they're good for 2 years. Current rates are 120 for that permit administration. Our analysis indicated that it's $160 for full cost recovery, so we're recommending it to be 160. Liveaboard permit inspection, current was at 69. Our analysis indicated that it's actually 80, so we're recommending to move that up to 80. And then the service fees, if you're out on a mooring that's using city services, so if you're at Marina Square, you're not charged the city service fee because it's assumed you're using Marina Square's restroom and bathroom and other services, trash and whatnot. If you're down off of Tidelands Park or down off of the Inn at Morro Bay, you're using city services, so there's a $15.75 service fee per month for that. No change in that. That's at 100% recovery. And then if you're a commercial fisherman in one of our slips, same thing. There's an additional charge of $32.45 for that. Currently, I don't think we've got any commercial fishermen living on our boats, but that one's at 100%, so no changes to that. Any question on the liveaboards? Lease administration, we went through vessel assistance. That's for the rare times when we charge. Generally, when we charge for our vessel assistance fees, it's during an event that creates the need for us to patrol or provide safety services. We haven't been traditionally, although we're looking into recovering some of our costs for some of the towing that we do. Basically, we're going to be looking at, everybody gets one free tow, but if you're a repeat customer time and time and time again, we'll start charging for it. So our The cost right now for that, for one boat and one officer per hour, is $183. Our analysis indicates it's actually $194 at current rates, so we're recommending that go up to $194. And then each additional person needed on the boat, and there's usually 2 needed for tows and whatnot. Currently it's at $69, recommending we raise that up to $80. And then down in the launch ramp parking, we're actually at 100% cost recovery, and getting excess revenue for capital projects. Fortunately, our large capital projects in the launch ramp, knock on wood, our Department of Boating and Waterways, our Division of Boating and Waterways funded, although we were denied last year, and getting 1.7 odd million for a total rebuild there. We've reapplied. Hopefully we'll get that. So the bigger costs for the launch ramp, the replacing the floats and rebuilding and repaving, major configuration changes are hopefully going to be grant funded. But we still have ongoing capital needs. We're doing a big redo on the fish cleaning station hopefully this year, assuming council approves that budget. We'll be doing some other upgrades to that ramp. So the excess revenue, like our accumulation fund for our general fees that are in excess, we kind of earmark our excess there and put it away in a capital fund to put back into the launch ramp, because that was sort of the promise we made to those users, that, hey, those fees are going to go back into that facility when we've got excess fees. So we are at 100% recovery. It's just at this relatively early point, we've only had it in place for, 5 or 6 years now. Don't have a good track record yet of what our long-term capital needs are going to be versus how much revenue we make. So we set it initially at $1 an hour, $5 max per day, which is what it's at now. And I know there's been discussion of potentially raising that, but that's where we're at now. And then we've got annual permit that we initiated. We've actually changed that permit to the calendar year instead of the fiscal year where it used to be. That's received a lot of praise because it was kind of hard for people to think in a fiscal fashion when they're out fishing and trying to just have a permit to go park. So it's $110 per year. We actually, when we go do our launch ramp counts and make sure everybody's paid their fees, we do a little checkbox count on how many people are using permits and cost that out and see whether we're losing money or gaining money on that permit. Because obviously, if you're a permit holder and you use the heck out of your permit, eventually you're going to get ahead and be money ahead personally, with the city potentially being money behind, and vice versa. If you only use it a few times just because you want the convenience, the city's going to be ahead in money because there are not going to be as many uses. So we've done an analysis now for 2 years, and it's surprisingly at or slightly above cost recovery. We're either flat, break even, or we make a little bit, a couple $100 or less overall of the 40-odd fees or 40-odd permits that typically have been issued out in the last few years. So we're good there. It's at a good rate, and we don't need to change it. It matches well for the amount of usage that's happening with those permits.
Okay. All right, any discussion here, Lynn?
Questions?
Question?
Yeah, under vessel assistance, numbers 22 and 23, obviously you don't do very many because the total amounts don't add up to a large amount based on the 183 or $49.
Yeah, if you follow across the columns to estimated revenue there in column, I think it's G. No, there's not a lot there. We, like I said, events are usually where we recover. If we start charging for towing and courtesy moves and whatnot,
well, I believe one other time I asked how many tows you typically would do in some X period of time, and I think the answer was like twice a week.
Yeah, we do a fair amount of towing. Most of it is what I would call one-offs. Somebody needs to move from point A to point B, and they're not coming back to us in a week, a month, 6 months. We may never see them again. And per our master fee schedule, the language in there about folks requiring more than one service type towing in any 6-month period would be the ones that we would target for charging for. In other words, if you need your boat moved a bunch of times because you're doing something to it, that's taking a little more advantage of the system. So that's where we'd be trying to recoup some of those charges. Or your boat breaks down all the time because you don't maintain it well, okay, well, you're going to start paying for your towing. But for somebody who just needs a one-off for some isolated reason, we would still be providing those.
Do you track the people who are getting towed? I mean,
we log it. I won't say I have a robust system of spreadsheet that I can put a name to and a number to at this point.
so in reality, you don't really know how, you know how much you make, but some of those people, if you would tow them and not charge them because you're not really tracking it.
If we begin to implement charging for multiple tows, we will develop a tracking system to where because it could be, you know, Scott one day and Dana the next time, you
right.
know, 3 months later, and Dana may not know that Scott towed him, you know, 3 months later for the same thing.
Or you may not remember that.
Yeah, no, we'll have to develop a system for that. Currently, no, we don't, but we.
I was just thinking that maybe, I mean, $183, $194 is pretty steep if you go from 0 to 194, but would a nominal charge not make sense? Either for all boats or to decrease the, what did you say, once every 6 months?
Yeah, more than once every 6 months.
More than once every 6 months.
The fee's always been there. We've just never.
I don't
really
know anybody who's ever been charged.
Like I say, most of our towing, it's not towing, our vessel assistance fees are for events that require our presence. That's generally where it's come from.
I think that what we need to do is develop a policy and formulate one so that we can start collecting fees for towing and vessel assistance.
And
Alan?
I'd like to clarify that you don't charge for emergency tows, right? Somebody's crossways in the current.
Correct, and that's always the sort of the fear or one of the backlashes of it, that if someone's, you know, hey, it may not be an emergency, I'm sinking or I'm going on the beach, but it's going to be very shortly. But we definitely don't want to discourage people from calling for tows because they think they're going to get charged. We're going to err, believe me, and we have to the nth degree erred on the side of caution. We just tow people to be safe, and I definitely wouldn't want to scare people off from being towed because they thought they're going to be charged if there's any sign of peril.
Gene? Oh, Alan?
This relates in my mind to the outsourcing thing. You know, we have a harbor with current, and you know, the Harbor Patrol. There was a guy that got crossways inside the T-pier not too long ago, and the Harbor Patrol had to come and rescue him, and I think it was a large party boat. And those kind of things are, you know, the Harbor Patrol does that, and it's needed, and it's a service that it costs, you know, but you can't get away without that in Morro Bay.
No, and there's a flip side to that coin in that in pretty much every other harbor south of here, you have a vessel assistance of some sort, and where those vessel assists are established, you know, typically the harbor patrols don't step in and take their courtesy and routine tows. So obviously they'll do the emergencies, but so we've got a vessel assist that's emerging here with an operator here that's starting to get into it, but he's not fully developed yet. So we're going to have to be somewhat wary of that. But another one of the benefits to towing and doing it often is that our guys are in keen shape and it's muscle memory, and when you do it all the time on a routine basis, when the what hits the fan is blowing 60 knots and everything's going sideways, they're on their game because they do it all the time. They don't have to think about it. And if you don't do it often, it's not good. So it's training in a way.
One other factor, the Harbor Patrol can respond anytime, during daylight hours, whereas if a vessel assist boat typically doesn't respond to somebody who's going to be in trouble in 5 minutes. That's the kind of thing that's hard for them to ever get at.
Yeah, I mean, if there's ever any question, even if we had a full-on vessel assist fleet here, if there's any question about danger or emergency, we're going to go, or the Coast Guard's going to go. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Gene?
Yeah, I just want to state that both Alan and Eric are very correct that the tide comes in and out twice a day, and it runs pretty good. And these guys know what they're doing almost all the time, and it's just they don't even have to think because they've done it so many times. So I don't have any problem with them assisting a boat. And the guys all know, well, oh, Joe there, his boat's breaking down all the time, and they're talking among themselves. They know that Joe needs to, he's overusing the system, so maybe he has to pay, but most of the time, they know what's going on.
Ron?
To put all four of your points perhaps into a single perspective, from the 10,000-foot level, this is a public safety issue. It's probably more a public safety issue than it is a revenue issue. So if there's some question, I mean, does the Harbor Department have the authority to make the decision, Mr. Director, to provide tow assistance gratis or not? Does the Harbor Department have that discretion? Do you have that authority?
Yes.
Okay, I'm perfectly content. Perfectly content. And if somehow they manage to collect $1,164 for 6 tows in an annual period, fine. If not, fine.
Okay. All right, then. So, Eric, thank you very much. I have no other questions. Would anyone like to entertain a motion to... Oh, I apologize. Ron?
Eric, would you please go to line item 25 on your spreadsheet? Are you in a position to change the cell value from where you sit?
Yeah, I can. I'll probably go sit up there because I didn't bring my binoculars. But yeah, I would recommend probably going to 26. 25 is the per day. Oh, I'm sorry, 24 is per day. You're on the right line. So yeah, we don't get a lot of revenue in the per day.
So I'm interested in what would happen to the bottom line of line item 25 if the 5 went to $7 per day max. I'm just interested because I can't see your formula, so I don't know how many parking incidents is driving your formula. And I don't need to know that.
Can you go on that spreadsheet? So on line 25, item number 25, the first column, which is probably column B, $5. I'm going to double click on that. Now keep going left. Oh, yep. Double click on first one there. And what do you want to change it to?
7.
7. Okay. So you've gone from 22,270 to...
It didn't change.
You lost money.
Let me go look.
Go back. You didn't do Excel right.
That wasn't my purpose.
Yes.
Ticket to a mooring person on the green. That's not true.
Why am I not surprised? No.
Yeah. Did anybody have a little calculator on your phone?
Watch, here comes.
What? He's excited about this. Oh, there it is. 31,000.
There you go.
What's the new number, please?
31,170.
I had them change the wrong column, so the $5 would have stayed. That one didn't have a calculator on it. It was the proposed rate that I changed to 7, so it went from 22,270 to, what was it?
31,178.
There you go.
Well, that's
A little
pretty,
under 10,000.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, for
given-
$2.
For $2. And I would encourage the board and the harbor department to consider an extra $2 for the max rate on the day. I park trailer down there. I got no problems. And my next and last comment about this fee schedule, insofar as the lease administration master lease approval is concerned, given the information that the harbor director provided about the typical term, those being from 10 to 50 years and a typical being 30 to 40, I would suggest that the department and the city consider a tiered rate based on 10-year increments. At the present, even at the $2,000 proposed in column C here, the amortization on a 30-year lease is $67 per year. On a 40-year lease, it's $50 a year. On a 50-year lease, it's $40 a year. So in other words, on a 50-year lease, if I negotiated and I pay the city $2,000, I'm going to pay $40 a year for the economic opportunity to use trust lands of the city for 50 years. It ain't enough. Not for a business enterprise.
You're going to pay a minimum rent and a percentage rent as well. It's not the only thing you're paying. But
I understand, but that's the cost of doing business, and so is what I'm talking about. So I just repeat, I'd encourage the department and the city to consider a tiered structure.
Any discussion on Ron's comments? Gene?
I'll talk about the launch ramp parking fee. Initially, there was no fee for parking down there. And when there was discussion on creating a fee for parking in the parking lot, the board felt very strongly that $1 an hour was probably okay. $5 an hour was probably an acceptable fee for the local people and some of the long-term people to come and use it. They want to go take their boat out for a row around the bay. If the guy wants to go with his wife and drift for halibut for a couple, 3 or 4 hours, $5 a day was a reasonable fee. And I hate to see it go any higher.
Any other comment? Okay. Seeing none? Yeah, Alan?
I had a question. The amortization, would that be 2,000 and up, or would it be centered on 30 years, or what were you proposing here?
My thought was a 10-year incremental tier. 10 years.
And that.
Oh, I don't want to get into it was a concept. I'm not proposing that this master fee schedule change tonight. I'm just, and you didn't hear a recommendation, and you didn't hear a motion. I did hear a recommendation, but I didn't hear a motion. So it's just something that I would encourage the department and the city to think about.
Yeah.
Were you anticipating a net gain from that in revenue?
Absolutely.
Okay.
At some point in time, but not tonight necessarily.
So, Ron, the clarification here, are you proposing that we think about the Harbor Advisory Board increasing the parking from $5 to $7 down there at the tonight, or is that just another concept that you want us to think about?
I move that the Harbor Advisory Board ratify the Harbor Department's master fee schedule as presented to us tonight for all items other than the 2 which have already been ratified.
I'll second that. We have a motion on the table and a second. Any discussion? Gene? Alan? Lynn? Neil? Ron? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Master fee schedule passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda here is...
man, that was painful.
This is new business. I apologize here. What is it?
D1.
D1. This is, Eric, we have a request and a consideration for a fisherman. Could you explain this to me here? I don't have my agenda, excuse me.
No, that's my job here.
Okay.
Present my staff report, and then we'll take public comment. So we've got a request from one of our commercial fishermen, Brian Williamson, who's in our slips down there below the Anchor Memorial Park, to get a waiver from qualifying for his commercial fishing slip. So Moorabay Municipal Code reserves city slip assignments to quote-unquote qualified commercial fishing vessels, meaning they have to provide a certain amount of fish landing receipts to maintain their slip. They can also qualify with a combination of fishing receipts and fuel receipts for a total of 90 days of fishing effort. This is all provided for in Resolution 2391, which is attached to your staff report. That was created back in 1991 that provided for those additional qualification measures, but it also provided for a appeal process if a fisherman was denied a waiver. So the harbor director has the authority to deny a request for a waiver. Essentially, the fisherman comes to the department and says, I need a waiver request, and here's why. I have the authority to deny that for various reasons. Fishermen are afforded 2 waivers from qualifying per year. We've also historically, over the last few years, allowed fishermen sort of a last and final waiver of coming to the Harbor Advisory Board to be granted that 3rd waiver. So Resolution 2391 provides the waiver granting parameters in a process by which the fisherman can appeal to the Harbor Advisory Board for decisions by the Harbor Director to not grant waivers. Recently, we've had a couple 3rd waiver grant requests by some of our fishermen over the last few years that the Harbor Advisory Board dealt with. But this is a waiver that's being requested because it was denied by myself, the Harbor Director. So Mr. Williamson is appealing to the Harbor Advisory Board. Mr. Williamson is the owner of the fishing vessel KT Marie. He's in slip number 23, which again is down by Anchor Memorial Park. He exercised his first qualification waiver in 2013 and had one remaining in the 2010 period. When he provided his fish landing receipts this year, or last year actually, the end of last year, beginning of this year, which typically we get them in December, January, to keep the slip for 2015, as we were trying to confirm some of those receipts. They didn't have dates, and some of the data on them was missing. We couldn't determine what they were, but we could see enough on there to determine, or at least attempt to determine what fish landing site they came from, and discovered that they weren't in fact issued from that fish buyer. So we went to Fish and Game, or Fish and Wildlife in Monterey, and to our wardens as well, to see if they could try and determine where those fish landing receipts came from, and determined that they were not valid landing receipts. They were in fact fraudulently submitted. So based on that, Mr. Williamson's request for his waiver after he wasn't able to have valid receipts, he requested one of his waivers, as he did have a waiver left, but due to the circumstances, I denied the waiver, as is provided for in that resolution. So he's exercising his right under the resolution to appeal the Harbor Advisory Board for that, to appeal my decision. Mr. Williamson's case is pending, I believe, with Fish and Game, or Fish and Wildlife, in terms of his landing receipts that he submitted, his fraudulent landing receipts. So we're bringing to the Harbor Advisory Board. Harbor Advisory Board's decision is basically a recommendation to me to grant him the waiver. It can also be appealed to the City Council as well, whichever decision the Harbor Advisory Board makes. So with that, we can open the public comment and then go to the Harbor Advisory Board.
Okay, I'd like to have some public comment here.
I'm Brian Williamson, commercial fisherman. I'll start this by saying that, yes, I screwed up. I will continue it by saying there was a very specific set of reasons for this. One, I had one waiver left. I've been gone from town mostly for the last 3.5, 4 years. When I used to tie up to the South T Pier, a couple times I damn near got sunk down there, because if you're not there with the boat, it's going up and down with the tide, it's not on a float, somebody leaves, they tie you back up, they don't do it right, tide comes up, you're in trouble. That's the first thing, being gone like that. It was a fear-motivated thing. Had some health issues this year as well. Was worried about being able to make that time. The way it's set up, 2 waivers in 10 years. Now, I've had KT Marina City Slip for 10 or 11 years now. This would have been my second in that 10 years. If it was 10 years from the time you start, well, hey, I'm okay. We're starting a new set of 10 years here. But I don't think that's how it works. I think how it works is within any 10 years. You get one right now, and inside of 10 years from right now, the next one, even if you've been there 20 years at that time, that's still 2 within 10 years. In any case, I wrote the Harbor Department an apology letter about this thing. I went in and personally talked to Eric a couple times, at which point Eric pointed out to me that he was leaning towards denying my waiver to begin with, but after having talked to me, he said he would consider it. Ultimately, the reason that he gave me for going ahead and denying it was to stay fair, because he has denied it for other fishermen in the past for the same exact reason. And at least on one occasion, he pointed out that the fisherman came to Harbor Advisory, appealed it, and got his waiver. Okay? I'm not trying to justify anything that I did here. Not at all. It's just a simple matter of keeping my boat safe. I don't have another place to put it. I am now currently back in town. Part of the reason that I was gone a lot was home troubles, couldn't be here. Fixing that now, I'm going to be fishing out of this port much more often than I have in the last 5 years. And it's on the basis of all of these things that I request that this waiver be granted. Thank you.
Steve Yarling, liveaboard, commercial fisherman, pirate, construction worker. I've done it all. Anyway, I'm getting older. I've been in California my whole life. I've watched codes and laws not being enforced over the many years. I used to be a boilermaker, construction worker, steel worker, union member, commercial fisherman. Seems like things that I have done for a living to make an honest, hardworking, living person that I am have been taken away from me. Things happen in life when you get older, with work, with where you live, and what you do. I think everybody's way too into everybody's business rather than loving and helping and being a good city and place to live. I think humans need to forgive and understand a lot more and love a little bit more as well.
Good evening, Ryan Hansen, Game Warden in Morro Bay. I've been here for about 5 years. I work on the bluefin here in the harbor. Just here to talk a little bit about what Mr. Williamson had said. Harbor Patrol had brought to my attention some landing receipts that appeared to be either inaccurate or fraudulent. Through my department, our statistical unit, it's very dry and a lot of information regarding how our commercial fishing rules and paperwork goes. So a landing receipt is issued from a fish buyer who is licensed by our department. The landing receipt is sent to our department and put into a computer system where the data is now electronic. Searching those records, there was no record of these landing receipts in question. I called the fish buyer named on that landing receipt. They have no record, no recollection. They had actually gone out of business in 2012, and these landing receipts were from 2014. So I was able to verify that these were in fact fraudulent. A disclaimer, this information has been submitted to the district attorney as a formal complaint, has not been judged or ruled on. So at this point, it's a report that has been submitted. It has not been, a judge has not ruled on this. In researching that issue, I found evidence from 2012 of fraudulent landing receipts for Mr. Williamson for the same issue. So I don't work for Morro Bay Harbor Department, but I kind of understand through this experience what their waiver system is. He had used one. This was his second. However, 2012 had additional fraudulent landing receipts, which would not have qualified him for that year. So potentially that was his second waiver. So this would now be a third waiver. In any case, that information has all been submitted for several felony violations of perjury and forgery. So just wanted to speak on that and confirm what the Harbor Department had brought to my attention, that there were some fraudulent landing receipts submitted. Thank you. Oh.
May I have a question? So you're saying that today, 2015, we have fraudulent landing receipts, and there is also a record of fraudulent landing receipts in 2012 from this individual?
2014, as Eric had mentioned, the land receipts from 2014 were submitted early 2015 to allow him to stay in 2015. So 2014 were fraudulent. Investigating that, I found in 2012 there was the same issue where the landing receipts did not equal a certain amount of money that the harbor requires for them to be a legitimate commercial fishing vessel.
Ron?
Officer, do you have any sense of how long in calendar time it might take to adjudicate this matter?
At minimum, probably 3 weeks. The report was submitted last month, and I spoke to the DA. It's been accepted. It's in the felony filing division. So really, I don't know. Court things get drawn out, so at the very minimum, a couple weeks, but it could be a year. So I can't with certainty tell you how long it would be until it's adjudicated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to bring this back. Is there any other public comment? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the board here for discussion on this matter. You know, to err is to human. I'm not a perfect human being. I have done some things that would have been nice to get a second chance. And, you know, with that, I'm a little concerned with the severity of the, is this a felony, if I may ask? So, so anyway, I don't know, that's just my thought. I feel bad for it, but any other comments here from anyone? Alan? Oh, sorry, Gene?
Yeah, Brian, I got some questions.
Yes.
Can you tell me what shape your boat is in now?
Boat's in pretty good shape. It only has minor things. I intend on nearshore fishing it this year.
And my second question would be, do you plan on qualifying?
Yes, I absolutely plan on qualifying. The only reason that I haven't is because I've been fishing my other boat up north. I've been gone from the area. And just as a little disclaimer, it's not part of the question, wasn't aware that all of this, to me, this was just a little paperwork. I had no idea that it was going to blow up into this sort of thing. I apologized from my heart at the time. I mean it even more now. But yes, I intend on fishing KT Marine, qualifying it. It's a $5,000 qualification. You know, it's very doable.
And then my next question is, are you paid up with the city?
Yes, with the exception of 1 year, I've been in a city slip with one and or both of my boats, not collectively. Collectively, it's a lot more than this, but for at least 10 or 11 years, and on the T-Pier before that. The minute that I got in a slip and we had the opportunity to pay in advance, I've done that all but 1 year that I've been there.
Okay. Okay, thanks. And then we did grant a waiver, a third waiver once before for almost the same exact circumstances. Close anyways.
I understand. Alan?
Well, I can't seem to dredge up all my reactions to this, but one thing is, it seems like the penalty that he has already incurred is so severe that I don't think we need to heap on any more by making him unable to carry out his business here. I know Brian, and I've fished alongside him, and all my dealings with him were great. I felt that he was an honest fisherman, and there is a temptation. I would say it's fairly rife among fishermen that when you have the opportunity to help yourself out in some procedural matter just by writing a ticket, guys are tempted to do that. The penalty is such a sledgehammer blow that in my mind I would think that we could let him off the hook in view of what's already going to happen to him. But I did talk in Eric's office about this, and the idea, I think, is to discourage people from doing it in the future. And Eric proposed changing the way that the fish tickets were obtained to qualify. Well, it's a proposal that would prevent it from happening in the future without having to hang him by his neck on the wall. You know, I think there are other ways to discourage people from doing this in the future than by punishing him further.
Alan, what is the punishment that could be bestowed upon Brian?
Well, if it's a felony, it could be, and now we're talking 2 felonies. It could be very severe. I don't know. Fish and Game has a habit of, taking away your ability to fish in California. I mean, they could say you can't fish anymore. I've seen that happen or heard about that kind of thing happening. So, I liked the talk I had with Eric on this issue, and I thought that would be maybe the proper way to address the problem. And yet, I'm in favor of letting Brian have his waiver.
Lynn?
I think none of us like the situation at all. Brian, you say in your letter, appeals have been granted in the past for the exact same set of circumstances. What are you referring to there?
I'm referring to Eric telling me that in the past, fishermen have turned in bogus fish tickets. Got caught.
No.
In both discussions I had with Eric in his office, he explained to me that this has happened before. I'm not some anomaly here. And in the past...
Yeah, without naming names, within the last, 2 or 3 years, we did have fraudulent fish tickets submitted that were going to cause a fisherman to lose a slip, and he appealed it to the Harbor Advisory Board. Same sort of circumstances and manner.
Thank you.
Neil?
To the city, is there a list for somebody to be in that space currently if that space was vacated? For somebody that would qualify?
Yeah, we've got currently boats on the waiting list.
That would qualify? Qualified fishermen?
That are, currently on the waiting list, qualified, ready to go.
One other question, if it's relevant or not, but the previous permit that was, or the previous waiver that was given, is that person reconciled? I know that doesn't necessarily pertain to this case.
Ask that again. I don't follow you.
I guess I don't know if that pertains.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No,
I'll
for
drop
somebody
that
else.
question.
Oh.
And then Ron?
Eric, in your staff report, it says Mr. Williamson has been allowed to continue using his designated slip until his appeal is heard. Is the Harbor Department willing to allow Mr. Williamson to continue to use his slip as long as his fees are paid until the matter is adjudicated, even if that were to take as long as a year?
I'm not sure there's an answer to that. I'll try. The appeal, while an appeal is in process, and this is consistent with any type of appeal, whatever the action that the appellant is appealing for is generally put on hold until that appeal process is moved forward.
Exactly my point.
So I would, in terms of this appeal process as outlined in the resolution, yes, he will maintain his slip until such a time, provided he continues to pay his slip fees, which aren't an issue. That process, losing his slip would not happen until this appeal process ultimately went to full term. How his case with Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife adjudicates, while pertinent, it doesn't affect the appeal process unless...
Which appeal process?
This appeal process.
Oh.
It's...
What?
We would almost have to tie a Harbor Advisory Board appeal recommendation to that case being adjudicated for me to hold it up on that.
There's another alternative. I am not comfortable as a board member addressing this request with the pending legal action. I don't think it's appropriate for us to do so, and as long as the Harbor Department is willing to continue to allow Mr. Williamson to use that slip, as long as he's current on it, I would recommend that we table this matter until it's been adjudicated.
Interesting point. I'll second that.
So,
I was going to say something to make a motion. I didn't know.
so moved.
Okay, we have a motion here. In a second, do we hear discussion? Gene? Alan? Lynn? Ron? Call for the question, Polly?
Can I have some discussion?
Yes.
I'm just trying to think through ultimately the appeal process. I'm not trying to weigh in on the actual merits of the appeal one way or the other. Just from the pure legal sense, I'm not sure the Harbor Advisory Board under this resolution has the authority to forestall this, so to speak, until it's adjudicated. It's an interesting point.
I think we do. I think we can table it.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to
We're
that.
not dismissing it. So I would suggest, we're still in discussion on this motion, I would suggest we go ahead and I mean, worst case, it comes back before us if we are advised by council, by city council, that we shouldn't do this or can't do it or whatever. It can come back before us in August, which is a very short period of time, and as long as Mr. Williamson is current, you know, if we're so advised, I'd be happy to listen to it again in August. Personally, I don't think that that's going to be a problem because we're tabling it, we're not dismissing the matter.
Well, there's a fly in your ointment, Ron.
Okay.
I'm reading This is why I don't like to do math in public, and this is sort of equivalent, but I'm looking at the resolution, not revolution. Not more than 2 waivers shall be granted in a 10-year period. Any person who wishes to appeal the decision of the harbor director regarding the waiver may do so to the Morro Bay Harbor Advisory Board by filing an official written statement with the harbor director not later than 15 days after the harbor director's determination. That was done. The Harbor Advisory Board shall review the appeal within 30 days of the date of filing, which was done. We're in that window. We're close to being outside 30 days, but this is as soon as we can get it on. And shall render a recommendation regarding the appeal within 15 days following the close of the appeal hearing.
Which, as you count the calendar, would be what date?
Shall render a recommendation regarding the appeal within 15 days following the close of the appeal date. So my read on that is you could render a recommendation right now, or you have 15 days to render it.
What was the date of your determination?
Well, your 15-day window starts tonight, within 15 days of the appeal hearing. Tonight is the appeal hearing. The Harbor Advisory Board shall review the appeal within 30 days of the date of filing. That is tonight. It's within the 30 days. And shall render a recommendation regarding the appeal within 15 days following the close of the appeal hearing. This is the appeal hearing. We need to render a recommendation within 15 days of right now.
We're not closing it.
Interesting concept.
And what Lynn said is, I think, viable as well. A key word is recommendation.
Not a decision or recommendation.
So it seems to me that our motion, which was a recommendation, is within the letter of 23-91.
And you're saying your recommendation is to extend it until it's adjudicated?
Table it.
Table it. Where's the city attorney when you need him?
He can.
We have 15 days.
And then
You can ask him tomorrow, and, excuse me, we have 15 days, so we can revisit this issue in 15 days, in 2 weeks.
No.
So then it reads on, the harbor director may administratively carry out the recommendation of the Harbor Advisory Board or may schedule the appeal for city council consideration.
Correct. That's my options following whatever your ultimate decision is.
So I'm gathering here that you don't feel comfortable with our recommendation, Eric.
Well, I'm trying to put on my lawyer hat and
So
see if that's within your purview to do. It's an interesting concept. I'm not, like I said, I'm not arguing on the merits of the granting it or not. Is that within the purview of this resolution?
Neil?
Yeah, I think that Ron's correct in this interpretation, and Lynn too, that is a recommendation to table it. Again, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, so I mean, 2 ways to pursue this is you make that recommendation, and I'll run this by the city attorney and see if it stands. If it doesn't, it puts us in the funny spot and almost have to call for a special meeting or do something within 15 days. This doesn't really spell out, okay, let's say you don't want to rule tonight, you want to sleep on it for 5 days, 10 days. You've got 15 days to make a ruling. I guess you 5 need to give me your recommendation at some point.
It's not a matter
within 15 days.
It's not a matter of sleeping on it. It's a matter of the appropriateness or inappropriateness of this civilian body dealing with this while there is an active case.
No, I understand that.
Not yet been adjudicated.
I understand that, but I'm speaking to the overall resolution itself and the language it's used. You shall render recommendation regarding the appeal within 15 days following the close of the appeal hearing. You've got 15 days to decide what you want to do. If that decision is to table it for now until it's adjudicated, that may be a valid recommendation, but if it's adjudicated in 3 days and we have an answer and I get that to you, this doesn't really tell me how we handle the appeal.
That's correct.
It's not a public meeting anymore. It's a strange resolution.
So
Then by default, wouldn't it come back to the next meeting? Then if we
by
table
default, it would probably have to come back to the next
yeah,
meeting.
so I'm not willing to pull my motion, but I bow to the majority. So,
Well, we have a motion on the table. We have a second. We have some discussion. Do we have any more?
The question is going to be, is the recommendation to table within the purview of this resolution, or is your only options to grant, not grant?
Well,
I'm not prepared, and I don't know the answer to that.
You have to
None
give
of
us a direction on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, my direction is going to be make the recommendation you want to make, because I can't definitively say one way or the other that, yes, those are your only two options, grant it or not grant it. You may have that option to extend this on. Table it.
Gene?
Eric, can you take this to the city council if we say we're going to grant him a third waiver, and can you feel like, no, I don't want to give him the third waiver, can you then take it to the council?
The way I read this, yes. Either way. Yeah. If I don't agree with your decision, I'm granted the option to take ultimately to the council for the decision, whichever way the Harbor Advisory Board decides. Yes, exactly. The appellant will be able to, Mr. Williams will be able to go to council as well.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but let me ask you a question here. You've already denied him the second waiver, and you told him that he could appeal it here to the Harbor Advisory Board. If we grant and make another motion after we vote on this motion from Ron to grant him the second waiver, will you honor that? Or can I ask you that question, Eric?
I'd say cross that bridge when you get there.
Okay.
If we're going to table it because we want to adjudicate it, that's a largely mitigating factor in terms of how you want to handle it and what wishes you wish to extend to that. You've got the motion on the table. I'd suggest going with that.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. All in favor, say aye. 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 All opposed? Motion passes. I did. So that is our recommendation. And as we come to, if we have to have a special meeting, that's something that you folks all received an email earlier today that maybe this might be an appropriate time to discuss this too. So what is our... Pardon me?
Sorry, I'm saying, do we want to close the discussion on this?
Yeah, it's over.
So we're tabled, or recommending not taking any action until it's adjudicated.
Correct.
And we'll keep in contact with Mr. Hanson. I'll get with the city attorney, and assuming that action stands, then we wait to see what happens with Fish and Wildlife. If not, and we can't in fact table this and extend it, then we'll have to figure out when to bring it back and handle it. And that may be a special meeting. That may be August.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Brian, thank you. Okay, so one of the things that Eric sent out an email to all you folks, because we have a lot of on our agenda, as you can see here, of holding maybe, is this the time to talk about the special meeting, Eric?
Yeah, we're on item D2, which is
Oh, that's
consideration and canceling of the July 2, 2015 Harbor Advisory
Yeah.
Board meeting,
Okay.
because we usually do.
So, and then the other thing is that, do we want to call a special meeting in lieu of canceling the July 2nd Harbor Advisory Board meeting? Okay? Okay, let's discuss whether we want to cancel the July 2nd meeting. Any discussion, Gene?
I won't be here, so it doesn't make any difference to me.
Well, that's the general consensus. There's a lot of, I don't think Eric will be here either. I really don't have any preference one way or the other. So,
Yeah.
July 2nd?
well, that's July 2nd, Steve. So I have no problem canceling the July 2nd meeting. Alan, what's your thoughts on it?
I think it's a tradition as far as I can read here.
Okay.
And yes, I won't be here either, but my alternates, well, they may not be here either.
Neil?
I will be here, but I can always use an excuse to work more. So I'm okay with not having the meeting.
And then Ron?
I'm perfectly willing to cancel the July 2nd meeting, but I would strongly recommend that the board consider a meeting in July, a regular meeting in July, at a different date when a quorum will be present, because we have a lot of work to do that's pending, some quite important things.
Okay. So with that in mind, let's go into the one thing. Do we hear a motion here to cancel the July 2nd meeting of the Harbor Advisory Board?
I'll make that motion.
I hear a second. Okay, I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstains? So the July 2nd meeting of the Harbor Advisory Board is canceled. So, next question here. What's your thoughts on holding a special meeting in July? Hopefully everyone had their calendar out, or at least has an opportunity to look at that. Gene, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll be gone till the 18th.
Of July?
Yes.
Alan?
I can't speak for my alternates, so I can't give you any information on that.
Do you know whether either one of the gentlemen will likely to be local?
Joe.
They are local. They're both local.
So, Lynn, your thoughts? Are you available in July sometime?
I'm always available.
Okay. I am too. And so I would be more than opt to, if it's after July 18th, then let's see if we can make it. Neil?
Yeah, I just can't do the 31st.
Okay. And then Ron, what's your schedule?
July is fine with me, anytime the second, third, or fourth week in July. So I might suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you ask the wonderful lady at Harbor Department to check and see whether the hall's available on perhaps the 20th or the 21st.
Do we want to be a Thursday, or does it matter?
Doesn't matter, but I'd like to maybe keep it a Thursday. That seems to be a good date for me. I mean, I'm always...
Well, we're starting to push the August meeting, but not that that's a big deal necessarily, but I think the earliest possible date would be kind of attractive.
Okay, well, can we try for July 21st?
Well, you want to go the 20th? We have the 20th thrown out there.
All right, the 20th is
Monday
fine.
the 20th.
Monday or Tuesday?
Gene,
Gene?
you're back on the 18th?
Yeah.
Well rested, ready to go?
Yeah. Well, Tuesday is the 21st. Okay. So, Polly, let's see if we can get that hall or some space for the 21st. If we have to go to the community center, I think that would be appropriate.
We'll shoot for here because obviously all this stuff's here. Is the 20th a viable alternate if 21st isn't available?
I think so. We can grab Gene.
And I'm here, so that shouldn't be a problem. I don't know. We'll figure out whether we're calling it a special meeting or the regular meeting. I mean, we don't have a meeting in July because we've canceled. We just moved it. Yeah, we'll figure out what to call it. That's not important.
Okay. So thank you. So you'll get back to us, Polly, at the soonest time. Okay, the declaration of future agenda items. I think we don't have those here, I don't believe.
They're in
In the minutes.
Oh, minutes, sorry. So on this special meeting, if we call it, is that primarily for the rules and regs? Or, I mean, try to get through all that?
It's for whatever you want it to be for.
Okay. Ron?
I have some suggested agenda items for that meeting. The most important, as far as I'm concerned, is the next phase of the harbor rules and regulations update.
Right.
That's been pending. We got sidetracked for 3 months on that. Another one would be the ad hoc committee reports, most particularly the insurance report. And then harbor best management practices, if we've got time to crack into that.
That's not a bad idea.
And then just as an update, it wouldn't take very long, I'd like to see an update on the Coast Guard building project. I'd like to hear an update. So that's my suggestions for the agenda.
Bless you. Lynn?
Yes, I would still like to talk about sea lions.
All right. Okay, we'll talk about.
So all these things for July?
That's a lot. No, let's table sea lions to August. When? Okay, they'll still be here.
Another, depending on where, what happens in the city council meeting with the boatyard / marine services facility, what they direct. I don't know if that may require something coming back to the HAB or not, but I'm just going to keep in mind a placeholder for that in case we do need to bring something back. That would be
well. I'm going to make sure that I'm there at the meeting on the 23rd, so we'll have some direction and we'll talk, Eric.
Okay.
And I should have asked the harbor director when I suggested the next phase of rules and regs and best management practices. I should have asked the harbor director, if both of those, if the department prepping for both of those was realistic for a July meeting.
Well, from what Eric stated earlier regarding that, they're not really going to do too much, and maybe we might want to hold out the best management practice till a later date, like you said, August, Eric?
Yeah, I'll have to go back and see how much progress. I think we had rules and regs queued up for a meeting, didn't we? And then we pulled it because Boatyard or something else came along. So I may have that already somewhat done. It may not be that.
Right.
Just got to change the date, hopefully. So I'll make an effort to do the BMPs, but if anything's got to drop, then it'd be the BMPs and not the rules and regs. Coast Guard billing update is like simple.
Now, where do we stand with the state? I know that's been, negotiations in the Back Bay. I mean, is that something that...
Nothing to update on at this point. Nothing to bring back to the HAB for any kind of direction. We've got your direction loud and clear on that one. And yeah, I think our standing policy for our ad hoc committees, we just have standing agenda items for all three of those. So I'll continue on with that.
Okay. But not necessarily for a quote special unquote meeting.
No, unless we need filler. For this meeting, we'll concentrate on these things we really want to get on, and then
Although do
insurance, yes,
yeah.
So, and then at the July 20th or 21st meeting, we can prep for our August meeting and what we wanted to discuss. Okay? So with nothing that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn. Oh, Alan?
Are we still on future agenda items?
Yes, we are.
Well, I would like to encourage you, Eric, to, at some point in the future, and maybe not the next meeting, but bring forth that idea about changing the way the fish tickets are gathered, instead of having the fishermen bring them to request them from Fish and Game, as a way to try to kind of get rid of this reoccurring
Temptation.
problem. Yeah, and the temptation.
That's something we'll look into anyhow. I don't need Harbor Advisory Board recommendation or input on that. It's an administrative function.
Oh.
It's not a policy thing, really. It's so duly noted. I can report on it later, tell you. How about that? We'll make it a status report thing.
Okay. So I have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a first and second. All in favor? First off, any discussion? All in favor? All opposed?